Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Could you pause for a moment, please? Can we mute whoever's there? Do we know how that? Fine. Yes, please do carry on.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Gruville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Could that be the connétable of someone? Yeah. Well, I think we know he's there. So, let's assume so then.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labby.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Doublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député de Hegera.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Mezek. Monsieur le député Joseph. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott. Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis.
Présente.
Madame le député Feltham. Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howe.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson. Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le greffier.
Prions Dieu. Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom, nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction, réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple qui t'a plu de commettre leurs soins. Quand nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant « Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Monsieur le député Ayer. Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Joseph.
Présent.
Madame le député Scott.
Défaut.
Madam Deputy Feltham.
Present.
Madam Deputy Stevenson.
Is absent on paternal duties. Les états sont constitués. Very well, before we continue with the public business, Deputy Tadier, I understand you wish to ask your question? Very well, as I've already indicated, in keeping with the time that was available per question for the questions with notice, then I will give 10 minutes for this question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for leave to ask the question. Will the Minister advise whether there have been any discussions concerning Condor's decision to remove the clipper service in the weeks preceding Christmas, whether the vessel is being used on an alternative route during this period, and if the changes are linked in any way with the delays in awarding the tender for the future ferry service?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, I'll just go straight into short answers really for these. Will the Minister advise whether there have been any discussions concerning Condor's decision to remove the clipper service in the weeks preceding Christmas? To my knowledge, no, there haven't been. Whether the vessel is being used on an alternative route, I believe it is, by Brittany Ferries, though I don't know what that route is. And if these changes are in any way linked to the delays in awarding the tender for future ferry services, absolutely not. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question.
Thanks, sir. The Minister sounded sure on that last one, so he knows it's not in any way linked to the current tender process, but maybe he can expand on that. I won't ask that now, but I'll let maybe another member ask that. I note that between the first of...
I don't think you can use your supplemental question to seed questions throughout the Assembly, Deputy. I'll allow that to pass once, but please don't list questions you'd like other people to ask. What is your supplemental?
Thanks. I was thinking on my feet there. But between the 1st of December and the 15th of December, there are only 4 ferries leaving Jersey to the UK, and they are overnight ferries. Does the Minister think that this is, first of all, sufficient for the island in the run-up to Christmas, which can be a very busy period for people travelling? And secondly, how does it fit in with Condor's operating agreement that they have either with government or Ports of Jersey?
Sorry, just to clarify my response, first of all, to that last part of the question, where I said absolutely not, from my perspective. So I must say, to my knowledge, these changes have nothing to do with the tender process. It may be that on the other party's side, they have some thought in their head. I can't speak for them, is what I'm trying to say. So from my perspective, I don't believe this has anything to do with the tender process. With regard to the frequency, as I understand it, at this time of year, the minimum service requirement, as required in the operating agreement, the current operating agreement for passenger and vehicle ferry services to the UK is 2 per week. And so the 4 sailings over 2 weeks that the Deputy refers to do seem to fit in that 2 per week minimum requirement. So as I understand it, the schedule is still operating agreement compliant. That's my understanding of the situation.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. The underlying issue which the questioner seeks is, would the Minister agree that this question about the clipper underlines, coming at the same time of hearing the observations of the former Managing Director of Condor, as well as a front-page article in the Jersey Evening Post today, does this not underline the importance of whatever company that is providing services to Jersey or Guernsey is the ability to have the investment capability of the right ships for the right journeys, and the ability to actually fund them, lease them, or whatever?
There's no doubt in my mind, sir, as a general statement, that's absolutely correct. I can't speak to whether this particular incident or event around the timetable changes speaks to it as strongly as we think it might do. It may well do, but I can't be sure. But it is my view, and it's one that I've stated quite clearly in this Assembly, that new providers of ferry services, whether it's the incumbent or a new provider, has to be able to show us their investment plans in terms of a new fleet, because the island needs a new fleet, and they have to be able to finance that, and there has to be a level of certainty around that. Those are things that I'm personally looking for in any bids. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question?
Does this in any way, this question, does this in any way undermine yet further, or not undermine, but give the Minister some concerns about the ability of Condor to provide this, to provide as the financing arrangements of Condor as he understands them to be? Does it not further reinforce his determination to ensure that whatever happens, that the funding arrangements for a new operator can be absolutely guaranteed?
Thanks, sir. The tender process is separate from this incident. This incident's perhaps the wrong word, but these events. What I can reiterate is that for me, the ability to invest in a new fleet, the fact that the island needs and deserves a new fleet, and the ability to finance that new fleet are absolutely fundamental to the choice of a new operator going forward.
Contabs and Saviour.
Thanks, sir. I think my question may have been partially answered regarding service level agreement. As the Minister is aware, there's a lot of people very, very upset with the disruption being caused at the moment. And as we're coming up to Christmas, there will be an awful lot of freight coming into Jersey. Is the Minister satisfied that everything can be done, is being done to facilitate that? Thanks, sir.
As I understand it, yes, everything is being done that can be done. I think the connotation is absolutely correct. You know, freight, particularly at this time of year, freight is always essential to this island. It is the food we eat on a daily basis, but at this time of year it becomes particularly important. Again, these events do not necessarily speak to any wider issues, but it is the case that when it comes to a new operating agreement, we'll be seeking to ensure that there is the right frequency of services, both freight and passenger services, under that new operating agreement.
Supplemental question? Deputy Hull.
Thank you, sir. I was just going to ask if the Minister believes it's satisfactory to just have 2 ferries per week at the current time, and if he will absolutely say that he's going to try to improve that, both to the UK and France going forward. Thank you.
So could I ask a point of order? I think I might have inadvertently given partial or misleading information. So it seems to me that there are 4 ferries that are bookable during that period that I referred to, which take cars. So it's in terms of availability. But when I've checked for the ferries running, it seems that they do run every day, but only for foot passengers in terms of the availability. So I wanted to clarify that. I don't want to mislead to correct Hansard. So.
Very well. Well, thank you for that, Deputy. Yes, Minister.
I thank the Deputy for his clarification there, because he's absolutely right that the 2 sailings per week that I was referring to were for passenger and vehicle sailings on the northern route. As much as anything to the question from Deputy Howell, because I cannot remember just from the top of my head exactly what the minimum service requirements are for the new services going forward. So there are minimum service requirements that we have put in for the new tender process. I cannot remember off the top of my head whether 2 vehicle and passenger sailings per week is part of that or whether it's more. But the minimum service requirements and the bids that we receive can be 2 different things. And I will certainly seek to make sure that we have the appropriate level of service requirement for passenger and vehicle sailings to the UK.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister also, when he is thinking of the tender, consider the school holidays, and especially Christmas and the summer holidays? Thank you, and the half terms. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, sir.
Well, we'll time for a question from the Constable St. Brelade, then final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I'm asking a question, given the Minister may not have the information to hand, but is he aware of what, if the reduced or indicated reduced capacity this year is less than that which was provided last year, sir?
The connotation is correct. To hand, I don't have that information, but I'll certainly seek that information. And if received, I will pass it on to members.
Supplemental to that?
Yes, sir. And finally, will he ensure that there is cargo capacity, given that Santa Claus's sleigh gets overburdened at this time of year?
Absolutely, sir. There's no doubt about it. And it is worth me saying, as Deputy Tadier in his clarification kind of alluded to, there are other sailings. These 2 per week, this is just passenger vehicle sailings. There are more freight sailings during the week. And so from that perspective, Santa should be fine.
Final supplementary, Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. So whilst I will clarify again that there are many sailings that are leaving in December for people from Jersey to go to the UK, that seems to be largely for foot passengers. And actually, if you're trying to book a vehicle to the UK, you're pretty much stuck. Does the Minister believe that, first of all, that this is a satisfactory situation? And can he give an assurance that whichever company is awarded the eventual contract to run services between our island and the UK and France, that there will be sufficient vessels to meet those expected services, not just the minimum service level agreement, but actually a reasonable service level agreement, and that their ships won't be called upon to effectively work other lines for other countries that don't involve Jersey?
I think the Deputy's suggestions are absolutely reasonable, and I'll certainly take all that into account as we do seek to award the tender. In terms of, is this current situation satisfactory? No, I don't believe it is satisfactory, because it is inconveniencing islanders. And the reasons, to the best of my understanding, this is not due to maintenance, which is understandable. These things happen. This is due to a change of use of the vessel in question, and it being taken onto another route. So islanders are being inconvenienced in order to help, as the Deputy put it, other routes in other countries. And that, to me, does not seem satisfactory. Thank you, sir.
Very well, that brings that question to an end. We now resume debate on the budget. The next amendment is Amendment 17, lodged by Deputy Wilson of St Clement's, and I ask the greffier to read that amendment.
Page 4, paragraph G. After the words set out in Appendix 2, Summary Tables 5, 1 and 2 of the report, insert the words, except that in Summary Table 5.2, 1, the head of expenditure entitled Descay should be increased by £2,500,000, and 2, the head of expenditure entitled Infrastructure, Rolling Vote and Public Realm should be decreased by £2,500,000. Page 4, paragraph O. After the words as set out in the appendix to the accompanying report, insert the words, except that, 1, on page 55 within table 23, the line entitled Descay should be replaced as follows in the table given. And 2, on page 55, for the words has been reprofiled to allow a new youth facility in St Helier to be brought forward in the earlier years of the budget, there should be substituted the words will be prioritised in 2025 to ensure the provision of a facility and to ensure that the project is not delayed any further. And on page 58 in table 27, the project line for infrastructure, rolling vote and public realm should be reduced by £2,500,000 for each of 2025, 2026 and 2027.
Deputy Wilson.
May I raise the defer on Deputy Scott? If she is in defer. Thank you.
Yes, the defer is raised on Deputy Scott. Yes.
Thank you, sir. 48 years ago, the Skye Youth Club opened its doors for the very first time. The club, I'm told, was a timber classroom that had been dismantled and removed from St John's School and re-erected at the Skye School, which is now called Samurai. As a result of the efforts of dedicated youth workers and volunteers, the centre flourished. And 6 years later, the centre's activity attracted the attention of the Education Committee. The notes of that committee meeting at the time stated the following: we are convinced that purpose-built facilities must be provided to allow the development of a more ambitious and energetic programme of activities in the Skye. The committee took a proposition to the Assembly and successfully gained approval to develop youth facilities in the east of the island. Eventually, the club moved out of its timber HQ into a new centre from where it still operates today. 42 years later, we find ourselves in the same situation as our predecessors. But if someone had told our predecessors 42 years ago that a youth facility would only be built in St Helier, there may well have been a revolt, because in those days, people could think on an island-wide basis. So what can we learn from this when it comes to addressing the needs of Liskeard today? Do we, as an Assembly, have the same determination as they did to do something about it? Over the last few days, some members have suggested I withdraw this amendment, the Education Minister and the Children's Minister. Some of you may even be sitting here now wishing I would just start to get the speech over and done with, accept the amendment is a non-starter and allow the Assembly to get on with discussing the really important issues instead. Well, the thing is, I can't do that because my representation to this Assembly is on behalf of the people who elected me, to challenge those of you who may not have the courage, interest, or determination to put things right for the youth and community of Liskeard. This is a matter of social conscience, just as much a matter of prioritisation. So why am I asking the government to bring forward the spending for Liskeard, and why is it important? The youth club our predecessors invested in all those years ago has come to the end of its life cycle. It's a crumbling mess and unfit for purpose, and certainly not the cool, modern space young people would prefer if they had a choice. It likely contains asbestos because it's so old. It struggles to accommodate the increasing levels of activity and is in need of maintenance and repair. These are the working conditions under which a youth work curriculum is being delivered today within an ever-growing community. So my question is, does this Assembly have the same foresight, the same courage and conviction as our predecessors to find a solution for Liskeard? Is it fair that the plans and ambitions for the facility, prepared with the involvement of the community, have been stripped away without any consultation, concern or regard for the people who live there? Is it fair to use the argument that St Helier hasn't got a youth facility as sufficient justification for removing the investment in Liskeard? If we're serious as an Assembly about serving future generations well, then investment in the timely provision of a new youth facility at Liskeard will not only improve quality of life for the many people who live there, but it will also avoid the need to use taxpayers' money on maintaining and repairing a dilapidated building over the next 4 years. This makes no economic sense at all. In the Commons paper prepared by the ministerial team, and at this point I would like to thank them for engaging with me on the amendment, I am challenged on the fact that the scheme proposed by the Children's Minister in October 2023 was not ready to go. Well, the scheme was ready to go, but it stopped with the change of government. To say that it wasn't just isn't right. The money spent by government at the time had been spent on developing a plan and a solution that was ready to go. I know this because I've seen the email evidence from officers confirming the position, and I quote, email between officers of the 19th of October 2023. Next stage will be to get it costed, finished, update the feasibility and get ministerial approval. And then, in an email to the Minister at the time, dated the 21st of October, please find attached the plans for the new Liskeard Youth and Community Centre and upgrades to Summeray School. We're now at the point to move forward with the project and for the architect to draw up the plans for submission to planning. We've undertaken a number of stakeholder engagements over a number of years, so it's really positive. We have now reached this point and we've got 7.5 million in the capital programme over the next 2 years, so we are in a good position to move forward. So, feasibility done, ministerial approval given, and £700 million of capital available to deliver it. This amendment proposes sticking to the intention and to ask the government to just get on with it. Please do not let this community down again. If it's serious about its commitment to Liskeard, then please show it. This is a facility that is really important to the local community, to grandparents, parents, and the young people who live there. The facility has served the community in surrounding areas well over the years, and we want this to continue. The government is in danger of sending messages loud and clear to this community that while they're prepared to do something, they'd rather prefer to leave it to another government to pick up. So there is a risk young people will disengage with their government if they cannot be seen to be representing their interests too. In a recent high-level survey conducted by the Children's Commissioner earlier this year, young people were invited to express their aspirations for change. Top of the list, play and leisure facilities, functions served well by youth clubs. For young people in St Helier, the government's budgetary position accords with these aspirations. But for all of us who are concerned to ensure fairness, I'm asking members to think seriously about the impact withdrawing resources from Liscay for another 4 to 5 years will have on the young people and the community of St Clement. The developments at Liscay cannot and must not be ignored or kicked down the road again without an understanding of the consequences. My amendment is proposed on the principle of fairness. If as an Assembly, sir, that we are serious about promoting well-being in young people and investing in future generations, then let all the arguments that are relevant to funding youth facilities in St Helier apply to St Clement too. There is a job to do in both communities and not just in one at the expense of the other. If government has an authentic youth agenda, then why not support my amendment and commit to investing in youth facilities in both communities at the same time? There is no need to create unnecessary inequity. It is a matter of choice, not affordability. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not through this amendment undermining the proposals for St Helier. Nothing could be further from the truth. I welcome the proposals, but I just want to see the same concern and commitment made to young people living in Liscay and the wider community of St Clement. They've waited so long for this investment, so long. Promised time and time again that this investment will be forthcoming, actively involved in shaping plans. So this is not about taking resources away from the needs identified in St Helier, as some might think. The effect would be to ask government to continue investing in both communities so that young people in the two most densely populated areas of the island can benefit equally. So we are all aware of the call on the public purse, but when it comes to investing in young people, unfairness in the allocation of resources should be avoided at all costs. There is nothing more disempowering to a community when the actions taken by a public institution reinforce stigma and the view that some communities are worth more than others. If ministers wanted to, they could adapt and flex their approach. Young people in Liscay deserve more from government to show that it cares about their community too. I had hoped that efforts to highlight the unfairness of the government's position with ministers and convince them otherwise might have resulted in something more than an initial promise of an offer to tidy up the facilities outside. Sadly, nothing more has materialised, and it's quite frankly an insult to the young people in the area who have spent time working up their proposals. Maybe just a little encouragement and support for the youth from this Assembly, sir, may spur ministers on to consider their original decision. If funding for Liscay doesn't materialise in this budget, it will continue to rapidly decline, having been kicked into the long grass once again. It undermines efforts of the Conatab, local deputies, local community groups to improve the quality of life for people in the area. The case for investing in revival and renewal of Liscay is as equally compelling as the case being made for St Helier. In the comments paper provided by the ministerial team, they refer to my desire to accelerate the provision of new and youth community facilities at Liscay. You bet. Given the delays that I've already experienced I am raising questions about this government's delivery intention, sir, for young people in Liscay and the wider community in St Clement. Is the government willing to revisit their decision, having erased the aspirations and ambitions of young people in Liscay, to satisfy a balance on a spreadsheet? Is the government genuinely interested and invested in hearing the voices of young people living in Liskeay and listening authentically? If so, can it explain to them where the money has gone that was set aside in for the 24 and 25 budget for the development of their youth club? Is this government standing by its own rhetoric on the importance of sustaining well-being, putting children first and building safer communities? Perhaps, but maybe not, because we see little evidence to suggest this is the case when it comes to Liskeay. Ministers have also commented that the 3-year fixed financial allocation provided by the amendment does not match the cash flow profile. Surely government would not be so inflexible on this point, knowing that capital projects ebb and flow mainly due to external factors, but this doesn't mean that the financial commitment shouldn't be made. We know from the work on new healthcare facilities programme, for example, that cash flow can be organised in any way you want it to be. So if the 3-year financial allocation doesn't work for government, then let's talk about what will. But please don't assume that the only option open to the government to fund the development of the club is to kick it down the road until 2028. Ministers have commented that they need to agree a different level of funding for the planning. As I've mentioned before, the preparation on Liskeay was complete. So by bringing resources forward in this budget, the capital work can commence. The comments paper really contains some confusing and contradictory responses to my amendment. Firstly, they suggest that there's no development funding for Liskeay, but then officers involved in preparing the response go on to say that the development has implications for Liskeay. Does this mean the community of St Helier will be determining what facilities are eventually provided at Liskeay? Secondly, the St Helier Youth Club is a destination for people. Does this mean young people in Liskeay won't have any local youth facilities unless they travel into St Helier? Unfortunately, sir, there is no one sitting at the ministerial table who can advocate as strongly for the needs of young people living in St Clement in the same way that a constable and 4 deputies from St Helier can for the proposed facility in St Helier. So I'm asking the Assembly to take account of this and to consider if sufficient consideration has been given by the Council of Ministers both to their own proposition and the amendment in the interest of fairness and balanced political judgment. I'm asking members to consider the possibility that if a government were to rethink how they might use the resources available to them, could they prioritise youth? Youth, not parishes and facilities in each parish, but youth. Can they fulfil an outstanding promise to the youth of St Clement as well as St Helier that they will deliver services for them? We all know that the elephant in the room constraining government's ability to spend money on things is the development of the new healthcare facilities. We all agree that investment is needed, but must this be at the expense of everything else? The purpose of my amendment, sir, is to plead on behalf of all those people in St Clement who live in Liskeay, who've placed their trust and belief in government to do the right thing by them. And it doesn't really matter to them which government is in place. It's the promise of a new youth club that's the issue. They have had their hopes and ambitions dashed by the stroke of a pen. It's simply unfair to say that one community deserves investment over the other, particularly when the original investment was targeted and secured for the community. In conclusion, sir, supporting my amendment gives some hope and removes any uncertainty for the people living in Liskeay. The same certainty cannot be guaranteed if the proposition carries to delay investment until 2028. And if members consider rejecting my amendment, I ask them to think back to the values held and the decisions taken by our predecessors when faced with similar circumstances. I call for the debate, sir. Thank you.
Is the amendment seconded? Conor St Helier.
So I'm not speaking to the amendment. There is an amendment from the Council of Ministers? No.
No.
Oh, thank you, sir. Sorry, I thought there was first. So the self-styled plumber from St John who will be known to some members, used to talk about maintenance and how bad the states of Jersey were at it, maintenance to the rest of us. And while I absolutely agree with a lot of the proposers' views about youth facilities, and I will leave other members to respond to her in terms of the respective claims of youth centres in St Helier and St Clement, and I should say in passing that I think it's a shame that already the idea of a competition between these two parishes has been suggested. I want to address my comments, sir, if I may, to the fact that to finance this amendment, the Deputy of St Clement is looking to take an enormous amount of funding out of the maintenance of this island, and indeed out of the public realm. And if I can look at maintenance first, any member who has travelled not a million miles from here will have noticed what happens to a community when there is no funding for maintaining the public realm. And this applies, of course, to all 12 parishes, not just to St Helier. All parishes have their issues. Holes open up in the roads and the pavements. Things go wrong. Weather events cause untold damage. And our road gangs from infrastructure, assisted, of course, by the parish workforce and honorary service, get to those problems straight away. And so when we see on the national news images of the kind of life that people in councils in the UK have to live with, potholes that you can practically lose your bicycle in, or the front wheel of your car, things that are never repaired. All of us have travelled to the UK, and in some parts of the UK, it looks as if they haven't been maintained for years. They are so grimy and neglected. And the effect of this amendment, if supported by the Assembly, will be to take that funding out of the 12 parishes. The Infrastructure Department will not be able to maintain roads, pavements, highways, banks, trees, sea defences, all the things that we take for granted, perhaps, in Jersey, and which are so, in some cases, so poorly supplied elsewhere. In terms of public realm in St Helier, of course, you only have to walk down Halkett Street, a formerly rather grey, drab town street, repaired with a budget provided both by the parish and the Infrastructure Department. And what we're seeing now is that empty shops are being relet. People are spending time and money, of course, in Halkett Street, and it's really taken off. If I'd had my way, it would have been called, renamed Rue Ivy Forster, but that didn't meet with a lot of support from the public. Perhaps it's something I'll come back to. But so the public realm in our capital is really important. And I don't know how many times I've had to respond to calls from people who say that town is looking tired, town is looking drab. When are you going to resurface New Street? I just replied to an email this morning about the state of New Street. And I remember being told off by the present Treasury Minister when I described, as a backbencher, New Street as a war zone. And I said, when are you going to resurface New Street? Now, if this money is taken out of the infrastructure budget, these projects will not happen. Projects will grind to a halt. I fully expect members of our road gangs will lose their jobs. And I simply don't believe this is the right source of the funding that the Deputy requires. And so I'll be watching and listening with great interest to how members speak and vote on this matter, because there are members who have, so far at least in this debate, have voted against the government at every opportunity. Is this an opportunity to vote against the government because it happens to be an amendment that the government doesn't support? Because if a member votes against the government on this one and then tells me they support the regeneration of St Helier, they support the maintenance of our roads and footways around the whole island, then I simply won't believe them. So I would urge members, whatever their views about youth centres, and this matter will be dealt with by other members, but they shouldn't allow the infrastructure rolling vote. It's not a particularly pretty phrase. If we go back to the former plumber from St John, if we called it maintenance and improvement vote, I think maybe it would sound better. Infrastructure rolling vote sounds it's almost like something you can take money out of and it won't affect it. It will affect the way our island looks and feels, and I would urge members not to support the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. And firstly, I would like to thank Deputy Wilson for bringing this amendment and for engaging with our team prior to this debate. Any opportunity to discuss and highlight the importance of youth work and youth clubs in our parishes is a good thing and should be welcomed. The Minister for Children and Families and I are both fully supportive of the youth service and the great work that it does, delivering both island-wide and in the parish of St Clement. But, sir, the Council of Ministers must consider the overall affordability and deliverability of the capital programme, and inevitably we're unable to do everything, everywhere, all at once. SIPES have prioritised youth club provision in the town area as being desperately needed, and there are very good existing facilities in Liscay, although it is accepted that they are in need of some improvements. Sir, the Minister for Infrastructure and I visited these premises last week to investigate for ourselves, and we saw some very well presented facility that has lots to offer our children and young people in the area. Sir, the whole area comprises of a sports hall, which is compact by modern standards, but is still very much fit for purpose. It also comprises an all-weather pitch, where young people can play outside in safety. Within the youth club itself, there is a table tennis area, a pool table, snack bar, and various other little breakout rooms where young people can just be together in the safety of the youth club itself. So the area is well served, sir, but we do accept that it is in need of some improvements. So we've already identified some quick wins which can be made in the short term to make it even better. And I've given Deputy Wilson an undertaking that I will explore these opportunities for the area. The proposed redevelopment of Liscay Centre is not ready to go, as has been claimed. It is currently at feasibility stage. Detailed design works are still to take place, and pre-planning advice and planning approval has neither been sought nor gained at this stage. The Liscay Youth Centre is open, it is safe, and it will continue to deliver the current youth work offer for children and young people in that area. And it is still squarely within the capital programme to 2028. I believe that Deputy Wilson has set up a community development group for the Samurai community, and I applaud her for this new initiative and the support that she has provided to our youth workers. Sir, I do, however, urge members to reject the amendment. As the Connétable of St Helier has already stated, it seeks to withdraw funding from the infrastructure rolling vote public realm for 3 years to fund the project. And apart from anything else, this action might put the new St Helier Youth Facility project in jeopardy. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I was disappointed in this amendment because while I would like to support it, I cannot. And that's because it would deprioritise the planned youth facility in St Helier. Of course, the improvement of youth facilities at Liscay should proceed, but not at the expense of the one in St Helier. There is a youth club at Liscay, whereas the children of St Helier have been left without any youth club for many years. That means the 3,000 children aged 9 to 16 who live in St Helier, where more than 70% of homes are flats, have no youth club. Many have no outside space of their own, but there is now the opportunity to put this right with a suitable site found for a St Helier Youth Club, which must not be delayed. We have to prioritise the St Helier Youth Centre. As for Liscay, which already has a youth centre, there needs to be improvements. The correct approach is outlined in the recommendations of the Children, Education and Home Affairs panel's budget comments, which I'll read, and I quote, "Further details should be published by the Minister for Children and Families and the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning about how the delays to the major project at Liscay will impact the youth service and Samaray School, including any mitigating measures that have been put in place in the interim." So I'm hoping for assurances on the work at Liscay, but that does not mean we take funding from the St Helier Youth Project. While we should have the best youth facilities for all the island's children right now, unfortunately, the budget is a matter of priorities. I ask members to keep in mind the well-being of those thousands of St Helier children with no access to a youth club and to reject this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. And I don't want to focus on pitting between two youth facilities because I want to paint a picture for the Assembly of the findings from the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Panel during its review of the proposed budget. Because throughout this process, we've sought clarity and detail regarding the abortive or sunk costs arising from the reprioritisation of the capital programme, but to no avail. Despite requesting this information months ago, we are still waiting for a response to an email sent after a hearing in September where we are assured such costs would be provided. Liscay stands as this glaring example. How much has already been spent on this project? Costs now seemingly lost. It's important to remember that this wasn't just a youth centre, it was intended to be a comprehensive community youth and family support centre combined with critical upgrades to Samaray School. When we asked the Minister which projects were delayed or cancelled under this budget, we received a list of 10. Many of these had progressed to the concept brief stage. The Minister explained that in the past, too many projects have been started but not delivered on time due to capacity issues. Absolutely fair enough. But Liscay was different. It was the only project on the list at a more advanced stage, and I want to respond to Deputy Ferry's point on this. A feasibility study for Liscay had been completed in October 2023. The project was ready to move to the planning phase, as Deputy Wilson has stated. Funds were then allocated in last year's budget for 2024 and 2025, budget that this Estates Assembly had agreed to finalise the plans for planning and to begin construction. So just as Deputy Ferry stated, in 2024, we're at the end of 2024, but in 2024 we agreed that 3.5 million was assigned to advance this project. Where has this money gone? What has been done in 2024 to advance this project? Because the feasibility study had been completed and was signed off, ready to go in October 2023. There was money put to get us to a point of actually having spades in the ground for this time. We could be now here speaking right now about a project, St Helier Youth Project, going, but also actually the things that actually have happened with the youth project in the Liscay and family centre and upgrades to the Samaray School. So this is what the frustration is. This is what the questions are. What has happened in 2024 to not be able to advance this project? Where has the money gone that was assigned to this project for 2024 to be able to move it ahead? How disempowering for this young people who participated in extensive stakeholder engagement. So there was an agreement that somehow this Liscay Youth Centre needed to be improved or redeveloped To say now that it just needed some maintenance and a coat of paint, I'm confused about that too. If this has been going on for a long, long time, and even money was spent, we spent money to make a feasibility study. So again, how much abortive costs have we had and wasted to get to this point? And now we have to wait to 2028 to start again. Now, I would like to hear, can we pick up that feasibility study in 2028 and begin the process in a normal manner? Or do we have to start again, kind of like Fort Regent, when we're having to, I don't know how many feasibility studies we're on in Fort Regent. But it's the same point. It's the same point. How much abortive costs have gone into this, and what has happened to the money in 2024, and how much more advanced could we be? And I think as States Assembly, we should be asking that question. What happened in 2024 that we could not have moved this project forward, so that we don't have to be pitting youth centres against each other? This is not what we should be about. We should be about understanding the process and development stages that go through, and actually answering questions, and that the scrutiny panel actually is, when we ask questions, is actually given the information on time. So, sir, what I'm concerned about as well, and I want to get assurances from the minister or ministers, that this doesn't also happen to St Helier Youth Project. Because again, that also has to start. So it has to go through the different development stages. And we got a response to questions from the scrutiny panel where it gives a very good overview of all the different stages that a capital programme goes through, from concept or big blue sky thinking idea all the way to utilisation. And it's really useful to actually see, and I strongly recommend states members to look at this, to understand the different stages of a capital programme, and so we know actually what we're talking about. It would also be good then to really understand how each stage's cost, etc., because it's not necessarily known how far we can get this St Helier Youth Centre to some kind of delivery by the end of this term. I would like to hear from the ministers, how far can we get? Can we get a youth centre by the elections? Are we going to actually see the St Helier youth being able to use their facilities? Or will it be a situation where in the new government, maybe again, we have reprioritisation again, and then there won't be a youth centre in St Helier either? And I'm really worried about that as well. So really would like to call on the States Assembly to question how we got here. How did we get to this point where now we have to make a decision, apparently between one youth centre and another? If we had been able to spend that money, as agreed, in 2024 to get the SCA further along, we wouldn't be in this situation now. And so it feels like youth projects are being yo-yoed around. It depends who's in charge. And I really want to hear from the ministers to understand what's happened in 2024, and then how far are we going to actually get one youth project before the end of this term. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. There may be a modicum of truth in that it maybe does depend on who's in charge about where money gets allocated, but I don't think that's ever been any different, has it? So we do have to acknowledge the fact that there is a different council of ministers here, and they have it's within their gift to allocate spending as they wish, and I wish to talk about that. I'm very sympathetic to this proposition. I think what Deputy Wilson is bringing forward here is absolutely the right thing to do, because she's amplifying the voice of her constituents. She's seen that this isn't just a new thing that's popped up, but since 2019 this has been on the table, and it's been an ongoing process, and it just seems that the wheels for change when it comes to investing in real people in our community, young people in our community, takes so much time, so much energy, so much effort just to get things to where they should be, where other things that, and other developments that happen can almost pop up overnight. And I'd like to explore that a little bit. What also makes me very uncomfortable is the fact that it's come to the point where this debate is now pitting St Clement's against St Helier. We've often talked in debates about the divide of town and country. There's that famous book which we often refer to about the triumph of the country. This is even worse because what we're seeing here is a divide and conquer, I think, from government and perhaps successive governments about putting not town and country against each other, but urban and urban. And in fact, I'm sure the boundaries between St Helier and St Clement are very blurred. Young people move back and forward in particular. They will probably have friends in different parishes. They may even go to different youth clubs. And I think that's absolutely normal and to be expected too. So I don't like the fact that the member has been put into this position. I also don't like the fact that St Helier deputies are being put in a position where they're obviously having money threatened to be taken away from them. And I would simply say that it's not the member who's moving this who I think should take any of that potential blame. I think I would make the point that government has within its power and within its budgets ample resources and intent and money to actually deliver both projects without delay, if they wanted to do that. I want to talk about, just very briefly, a quote that we had. So when we were looking at this wider budget as an Economic International Affairs Scrutiny panel, on the, I think it was the 20th of November, we had a Minister for Economy in, but we also had the Chief Economic Advisor who spoke to us. And we talked about investment in the island, and we talked about the wider economy, as you'd expect. We talked about investment and the future economy in Jersey. And one of the things that he said, and I'll quote this, sir, it's in the public domain, it was a public meeting. So I think, his words, I think bang for your buck, public investment is one of the biggest returns you get on any form of investment for a wider economy. But that is in things like early education, good infrastructure, and the like. We have some of those things already in place. We do invest quite low levels publicly. We spend large amounts on services as opposed to infrastructure and capital investment. I think we have done that over a number of years, and reversing that trend, I think, would be important from a public sector point of view. So what he's recognising there, I think, is what many people realise, is that government is not very good at investing in often real infrastructure that helps real people. I've made this point before, that it's often very good at squirreling away money over decades, and then on the one hand saying, look at these massive reserves that we got, aren't we doing great? Absolutely important that we have those reserves. But on the other hand, still pleading poverty. And I've made the analogy before. It's like I don't know if we can use the word, but the miser who lives perhaps in a very big but run-down house, who looks like he's living in poverty, but it's actually got millions of pounds tucked under his bed. It makes absolutely no sense, of course, because it's not, he could be having a different, or she could be having a different existence. You do get female misers, of course. Let's be perfectly equality-based here. So when it comes back to the question of equality between St Helier and St Clement's, I completely resent being put in this completely false dichotomy that is being presented to us by government. I have to accept the political reality that actually I vote with what's on the table here, and I'm not going to vote for money to be taken out of the public realm, which would be used in St Helier to be spent in another area. But I fully accept that if it was a St Brillard question that was coming up about Le Kennevet, I might fully think completely differently. So what I would say, and I put this out to government and I put this to Deputy Wilson as well, is that I think 2028 is far too late. I would urge this government to get on with its building of facilities in St Helier, which are very much needed and which absolutely need to be supported, and which will actually benefit not just St Helier but young people throughout the island who come to St Helier. But that she comes back and gets an assurance from government, and I'd like to hear some of those assurances today, from government to ensure that at least my vote goes with the government side on this and not with the proposition, because there's still an element of doubt in my mind on this. And I would like to get a commitment from them that they will prioritise spending at Liscay. And I would like to encourage the member for St Clement to come back actually in next year's budget, if they haven't made that priority, to bring this back next year. And I'll be certainly very happy to vote for that proposition so that the work can get started and funding can be allocated in this term of office and not have to wait until 2028. Just last remark, I do have to, I had to chuckle when I heard Deputy Ferry talk about the compact by modern standards. So talking about Liscay Youth Club, and I think he might have been referring to there's a basketball court in there, if I remember right. I've been in Liscay, I know, I've been there for as well. And I think that's how they used to describe Holier School, the old Holier School, when we were hemmed in, I think, to this tiny gym, and it was much smaller. It's probably about half the size of an actual basketball court, and for young people who are 6 foot plus to try and have a game of basketball, you could really only do it 3 aside, and then whenever you would do your layups, you'd just run into the wall, so you'd end up hitting the wall because the momentum took you there. So that was certainly compact, and I think that if Deputy Ferry ever decides he doesn't want to be a politician, he'd make a very good estate agent, I think. So I'll leave that thought with him. My sympathy, I know sympathy is not what the Deputy needs here. She needs votes for this. And I would say to government, don't be complacent in future just about the fact that you've got a parliamentary majority here that you can force this through. Actually, what you need to be taking, looking at here is your moral obligation to young people throughout the island and actually making sure that we provide that in the future. So for the moment, absolutely, I look forward to developments in St Helier, but I hope that we also get those developments within this term of office, irrespective of which government is in power and which members are on the backbenches.
Constable Peter.
Thank you, sir. When talking about the St Helier Youth Centre, I would remind members who were there at the time that this was first proposed by Deputy Ward in 2018, and of course I must clarify that that is the Deputy Rob Ward, the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, because there can be some confusion. Interestingly, I think just over £3 million was allocated to that project, and where has the money gone? I must ask that question. Yes, one of the previous ministers reallocated that funding, and St Helier lost out on a youth centre. And we're talking of around 1,600 children in the immediate area of where we intend to build the new youth centre. That's a very large number of children, and there are no facilities in St Helier. I had a recent media interview, and they asked me what had changed since I was a teenager. And one of the things I was able to say, and it had nothing to do with this proposition, was that when I was in my teenage years, I can recall at least 4 youth clubs within St Helier. Now there are none in the central St Helier area at all. There is a facility at First Tower, which I think is just in St Helier, but there are no others, and that's quite a small facility. So the biggest change is that there is nothing in town for these children, and we are building more units of accommodation in that immediate area. So there is a priority for St Helier. I do question that the Liscay development was ready to go, because it wasn't. There are no plans. There are no plans that have been approved. Certainly the feedback that we've got is that there has been very little by way of pre-planning advice either. So I do question how ready it was to go. I also question that because the youth service have told me that they wish to make some changes to the original proposals anyway. So I think that yes, there were plans, but there were still revisions that certainly the youth service required. The budget. We have a figure in this amendment of 7.5 million. The actual budget, the latest estimate, is around 9 million. Now, it involves the demolition of the existing centre. So, 2.5 million, what would we spend that 2.5 million on? Would that be the demolition? And then where would we be? We would have no centre at all at the Skye or in St Helier. I think we have to think about careful planning here. If there is a large new centre in St Helier, that will serve not only St Helier, but youth throughout the island. If the Lascay Centre is demolished, then those children have to have somewhere to go during that time. And if there's a new facility in St Helier, that is going to probably be the closest youth facility to Lascay. So we don't intend, it is not an either or, both will be delivered. I agree that there's been some reprofiling, and in order to meet the budget for both, that's necessary. But the Lascay Centre is currently operational, and there is no question that we will not continue maintenance on that centre to ensure that it is able to fulfil its role. And the youth centre are confident that they can continue delivering facilities for young children from Lascay through to 2028, which is where the reprofiling puts the build of the new Lascay Centre. Sorry, sir, I've looked at the microphone, a bit of a moment there with the file. I can also talk about the play strategy. Again, in the same interview, in fact, I had, although the question wasn't ours, I noted the lack of facilities in the east of the island. And therefore, within the play strategy, we have to feature on how we end this east-west divide, where there are actually numerous facilities in the west and relatively few facilities for the youth in the east. And that's a very important part of that new strategy. We're not going to forget about the east, and I intend that should be covered, and also that there should be a plan to how we rectify that situation. So, I would ask members, I will keep talking with Deputy Wilson to see if there are changes that we can arrive at, or some form of compromise in the future that would deliver the Lascay Centre slightly earlier. I'm quite happy to do that. We must keep talking, but I would urge members to reject this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Connitab. Can I just make the observation that during the Connitab's speech there was a little bit of background noise that I could certainly hear, and it could be distracting to speakers, and perhaps members could be careful to, if they are going to exchange it very much sotto voce. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. And I'm rewriting parts of my speech because Deputy Tadier made many of the points I was going to make, and I thought he made them very well. I think all members agree that St Helier is important. I'm not sure why the parishes are being pitted against each other in this manner, because yes, every family, every child in the island uses St Helier, and that is important. But children living in other parishes towards the east of the island, like St Saviour, St Clement, etc., all of these parishes contain built-up areas with many families, with perhaps similar characteristics to many of the families living in St Helier, and those families and those children are important too. It's not just children from St Clement as well who want to attend this youth club. I know that children do tend to visit friends and they mix into different youth clubs. So this isn't just about the children of St. Clement's. I wanted to pick up on, excuse me, on a point that was made. I believe it was made by the Constable of St. Helier. It might have been a previous speaker, about the number of residents in St. Helier living in flats. And I had a look at the census data, and of course I don't disagree, there are many children who are living in flats and don't have facilities to play near their homes. But in St. Clement's, the same is true, and there is a very high proportion of St. Clement residents living in flats. It's nearly a third of the population of St. Clement. So there is need in this parish as well. There is need in the east of the island generally. The children of St. Helier, yes, they need youth clubs, and the children in the eastern parishes also need youth clubs. We should not be making this an either-or situation. One child is not worth more than another. The language that the minister used in his speech, that there has been some reprofiling, and this term sits uncomfortably with me because it almost makes it easier to feel a bit more removed from the decision by characterising it in such a way that it's just there's been a reprofiling. It sounds quite benign, doesn't it? But I would challenge the minister to say that to the children who live in this area and who use Liscay Youth Club, to say to them, sorry children, you have been reprofiled. And what message does this send to those children? Because it's not just a bit of maintenance that's needed. And I don't buy this argument that, oh, well, they've got somewhere to go. Because actually, when does it become a tipping point and that somewhere becomes actually a place that's maybe having a negative impact on their self-esteem? Children having a building allocated to them for their use, a building that is dilapidated and not maintained, what message is that sending to those children? And what is it doing to their self-esteem being in those conditions? Those children are being failed at the moment. We are failing those children. And again, I'll go back to the point, just because we are failing other children in other parts of the island and failing them in a greater sense, it doesn't mean that we should not address the failures in this part of the island. And in terms of the amount of time that this is being pushed back to, that's another thing that makes it critical for me, because if it's going to be another 4 to 5 years, that's almost half a generation of children. And if a child is starting to attend a youth club around the age of 11 or 12, when they reach secondary school, 4 to 5 years, that is the entirety of their later childhood and their journey through secondary school. It's just not good enough, sir. And I don't buy this message that we can't do both. I don't buy it. And this source of funding argument, I raised a question about this yesterday. I just do not buy it. And I don't think that there should be arguments made about, well, we can't do this because if we do it, we can't do this other thing. Yes, I know. I'm a sensible person. And I know, of course, that we have a certain amount of money to be spent on a certain amount of projects. But we are supposed to be prioritising what we are delivering to the children and the families of this island. We need families to stay on our island. We need young adults to have children. And if we aren't providing environments where there are facilities for those children, then people aren't going to want to have families on Jersey. That's how serious it is. So yeah, I don't accept this argument that if we prioritise the spending for Liscay, it means there isn't going to be a St. Helier Youth Club. No, I challenge the government to do both. And I urge members to vote for this and to set our expectations that government should be doing both, that government should be thinking of and addressing the needs of children across the island, including in the eastern parishes.
Very well, thank you very much, Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I'll keep my comments brief as we are hopefully going to keep momentum today. And I put my light on after Deputy Tadier's good comments. But I want to reflect first on the quote of a movie titled by Deputy Ferry, who said, "Everything, everywhere, all at once." Well, sir, to those who suffer from many community-based projects, and I will look to Deputy Rob Ward and those in St Helier from his 2018 proposals, but to those today in Liscay, I think to Annie, and tomorrow is always a day away. And unfortunately, for those who had their optimism from a capital programme set previously, a youth centre and the associated facilities we've heard, not just a youth centre, will be not just a day away, but many years away. And I'm glad that the chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel highlighted the abortive costs and the changing nature of the capital programme. This was highlighted by the Constable of St Peter, who highlighted how money moved from where it was directed before. And perhaps that's something that the current government could address, providing perhaps some great historic examples of transfers and current ones. And then I'd like to move on to the comments about where the funding comes from. And right off the bat, the Constable of St Helier broke this argument into one of not just is it good to have a youth centre upgraded with associated facilities at Liscay, but where the funding is coming from. And I say, sir, we've heard already that the enemy of a good plan is a perfect plan. And if Deputy Wilson's plan was perfect in numbers but not in allocations, it is the failure of the government to provide a good plan in where to fund it from or how to compromise. And it is on this point I rose from what Deputy Tadier said, which is, why not at least offer an olive branch, a compromise? If the full works starting in 2025 are not fit for purpose, if we can't do that, why not commit to bringing plans forward that will be, as those who like their capital programmes, oven ready or shovel ready, depending on what you're looking for. That would have been a really interesting compromise, and one maybe as a Deputy of St Clement I could have supported. So I struggle with this because our constituents, our communities in the whole of the east of the island had an idea for this, and they had invested community trust in seeing plans move forward. And every time in any part of our capital programme and our wider programme we shift tack, then we erode that trust. And it is incumbent on anyone in a change of government to consider where stability lies in this. And I believe it was at the beginning of this year, though I'm scared to quote Hansard now, I think, given how things happen in here, but it was actually the Chief Minister who, on being questioned, I recall, committed that this year, the 2024 to 2027 government plan would be followed. So the question, where is that 3.5 million? Where are the plans? Where is the pragmatism and the compromise? So, sir, I struggle, but I want to support my constituents.
Deputy Hull.
Thank you, sir. I am very supportive of improved youth facilities in St Clement and St Helier. I know that play is really important for all our young people. I support Deputy Wilson, but I believe that at the moment we have to prioritise facilities in St Helier as they have no facilities. So I ask that in the meantime we look at FB Fields and facilities there, and the Rockier School. They've got a wonderful playing area at the back, and see how we can work smart for our children in this area. If the youth facilities have to be demolished, then they will need something in the interim. So as a government, we want to do our best for all children on the island. So please can we all work together and come up with a proper solution. But at the moment, please can we just go ahead with and support the Minister for Children and the Minister for Education in their stance. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Colin Harbison Saviour.
Thanks, sir. So we have two primary youth clubs in St Saviour, which we share with our neighbouring parishes, which works very well. We have a club at Montfort, which we share with our friends in St Martin, and we also have another one in Granvaux, which we share with St Helier. Children are not worried about parish borders. They'll go wherever they wish and wherever their friends are. There's always room for improvement. And I've just recently signed an agreement with the Granvaux Youth Club to sponsor one of their leaders for 3 years. I do wish to see greater improvements in youth clubs. Something the deputy said did bother me a little regarding St Clement, that the building is very dilapidated and probably has asbestos. That did worry me. Asbestos is usually okay until you disturb it, but if the building is dilapidated, I do hope that the building has been checked out for safety. But I wish the deputy well. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this yet. It is a very emotive subject, so I will wait to hear from colleagues. Thanks, sir.
Very much, Connie. Deputy Robwood.
Thank you, sir. It's very interesting to hear some of the speeches because they could be my speeches at the risk of being confused. The word frustration was used right at the beginning of this, and I can say that if there's one person that has a frustration over youth facilities, it is me. In 2018, a youth facility was agreed for the centre of St Helier and the common strategic policy of that government. Money was allocated, and it was voted for by a significant number of people who are in this assembly now, and that importance was identified. Sort of parallel to the beginning of a youth facility in St Clement's, I would say. Despite my push as a backbencher, that didn't happen with successive education ministers and so on, and I know there have been quite a few, a bit like being Man United manager, so. But we got to 2022, and in March of 2022, I amended the island plan to allocate a place, Nelson Street, for a youth facility. I've seen the plans for that. I've seen the plans for the brewery site. I've seen plans for other sites, which I won't mention, because I don't think it's fair to mention them, because people might not know about them, and there might be a place that they want to sell and they don't want it to be spoken about. Lots of plans have been put in place. Nothing acted upon, because it wasn't possible to do both. It wasn't possible at that time. It wasn't possible from March 22 onwards up to where we are now to produce that facility in the centre of St Helier. And just let me read out some names, sir. Cyril and Markham Court, Northern Quarter, Merchant Square, the brewery site itself, Mayfair Hotel, and more. All of those are homes that are being developing in that area. Many, many children will be in that area, and we have developed that without any youth facilities in the centre of St Helier being developed at that time, and over the last 2.5 years, and in the 4 years previous to that. And so we are in a position now, there is a desperate need for youth facilities there so that the youth service can do their work. And that youth facility, when it's built, will be a centre for families in that area during the daytime. And indeed, sir, I'll go further and say, if we'd have actually built the town school, that town school could be used partly, not only La Passerelle Junior, which is currently in porter cabins, but with facilities on the roof of that school that could be open to the local community as well. So these projects are desperately needed. And the pitching of those projects against another one, I find very unfortunate indeed. Now, in terms of delivering both, I would ask members of the previous government and the one before that, why weren't they delivered? Why are we only now talking about a youth facility in the centre of St Helier? Because actually, in the few months that we've been here, it's been a pleasure to work with Deputy Ferry and the Infrastructure Minister, find a site, find the money, and have the plans, and be ready to actually develop that as a site which is desperately needed. And that's what we have to do. And any risk to that site is, when we talk about letting down children, we have let down the children of the centre of St Helier for years and years and years. There are thousands of homes and children in that area that have no youth facilities whatsoever, despite my efforts. And it's only now that we're actually getting to that facility. And what we get is an amendment that will take money away from that facility and put it at risk. And yes, I would absolutely love to do both. Obviously, there is a way we can do both, and that's to have a proper reformed government that would have a fair taxation system and allocate money accordingly. But, you know, that's for a couple of years' time. And I would say to St Helier deputies, if you want to get down the line of pitching St Helier against somewhere else, then you've got to decide on a side to sit on. Hopefully it will be for St Helier. Probably not, don't know. But if you don't want to do that, let's look at the reality of this. A youth centre does exist in Liscay, and there is some work that's going to be going on actually. There's going to be the repurposing of the outside of it to increase the area outside and the basketball courts and realign them, which is happening now. And one of the approaches that we do need to take, and I agree with this in terms of capital projects, is to use the money and allocate it appropriately at the time. So if there are delays, let's put it into something else, absolutely. But there is a real priority, and I will say this to this assembly. If you are going to lead, you have to lead and you have to make priorities. I am happy to have the priority of a really desperately needed youth facility in the centre of our town that can intervene with young people at an early stage using the wonderful skills and dedication of the youth service. And I don't say that as an empty thing. You know, we all know that. We all agree with the work they're doing. And that early intervention and young people in that inside of town can make such a positive impact into the future. But there are no facilities there to do that at the moment. And my plea is to say, please do not put anything away when we finally got to a stage where we can build something. You know, if you want to, anyone here, you can have it named after you. I don't mind. It's not about that. You know, whatever, do whatever you want. Whatever you want to, it doesn't matter. But we have to get that right for the children of St Helier. And yes, and there is a practical issue here. If we were to go through the full, we have to time this properly as well. Another reason, and this has to be considered by even those St Clement's deputies who perhaps will, you know, have this pitting one against the other, which I think is a shame. If we do not build a facility in St Helier, which is a large facility, really, really good, purpose-built, state-of-the-art, modern for young people in that centre, St Clement's will be demolished and we'll be in a situation there are no youth facilities for we don't know how long. Now, having worked in a place where they did discover asbestos, it was in the labs, when it was not disturbed, we were okay. As soon as they went to rebuild that, it added cost and it added time onto that build. And so we have to be in a position where there is a fallback in order to do that. And I think I've got to say in the planning of Liscay, that was not considered as well as it should have been. Now, I don't want to pit one against the other. I would love to do both. The allocation of money is a reality this year that we've inherited and we're going into the future. But we have to be real about what we can do. If you don't want to prioritise St Helier, then I would ask you to speak to the children and the parents and the families in the centre of St Helier, where we're packing them in. We're packing in the homes, we're packing in the building, we're packing in the families. Go and live there. That's the place to be because that's where we're building. And say to them, but we're not going to provide any youth facilities. And actually, the school, which I'm really hoping we can move forward at last in the next few weeks and months, won't be built, and you just get on with it because we want to pitch one against the other. So I hope the Assembly can vote against this amendment today, but recognise that of course we want to do everything. Of course we do. But it's been 6 years since 2018 where everything wasn't done. And one large project of the Centre of St Helier was not done, even though this Assembly voted for it and money was allocated. We are finally at the stage where that can happen. And I urge members, don't do anything to get in the way of that. Of course we want to help out at Liscay. And there's work going on across our schools all of the time. There's work going on across our facilities all of the time. And yes, I would like to throw a lot of money about at that, but you know, yesterday there were votes on not putting money into some of the other projects we want to get on with, so we can't, you know, where are we going to go? I think the argument over, finally, sir, just to say, and I'm sorry I've taken a little bit of time, but this is, I'm trying to calmly work my way through this, sir, because I think it's a really important point where we are. The word fairness was used. It is completely unfair to leave the children of St Helier in the centre of St Helier and the families in the most densely packed, populated area of our island without any youth facility. And it has been unfair to do that for the last 6 years. And we all have to take responsibility for that. I always feel I could have pressed more as a backbencher. I didn't feel I was listened to enough. I blame myself for that. I feel that ministers, successive ministers, could have done more, including myself, and I'm trying to do that now, and we are getting somewhere to do that now. But we have to take on that project because it's an important project for the future of so many people in town. And we cannot simply go away from today saying, oh, we've got a nice idea, we'll just do both. But how's that going to work? Where's the practicality? Where's the money coming from? What's the timings? How do they fit together? Where are we in the actual planning process and the plans for that? Where are we? Is the youth service still going? Are we going to delay everything? That's what's happened in the past. Everything has been a priority. But those priorities haven't even moved forward when they've been made a priority. So I have to say, and this, I know members of this, some of the members of this assembly won't like me saying this because they simply don't want to believe this. We have prioritised and we are getting things done and we will get this done and we will move forward on this. So please give us an opportunity to do that. Of course we can work with the Deputy of St Clement to try and do as much as we possibly can. I think the very notion that I don't believe that the Deputy would believe I would want to do anything else. I mean, that's where I come from. Well, although I'm not sure what people believe of me at the moment in this place, but there you go. But it's really important that we get this right. It's really important we get this right for St Helier and the rest of this island. The youth facilities that are there, we shouldn't be talking down. They are open, they're doing a great job, but we have got this opportunity to produce something in St Helier that will be state of the art, and then we've got a model then as well for the rest of the island too. So, sir, I urge members to reject this amendment simply because it puts an obstacle in the way of something that is desperately needed and has not been acted on for 6 and a bit years. So let's get this done now and then move on for the rest of these facilities as quickly as we can with the prioritisation as we can do it. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Constable St Clement.
Thank you, sir. Before I use my prepared speech, I need to caution the Constable of St Helier and other members on the emotional blackmail that is produced in this assembly. I talked about it yesterday. It is not the case that if we build a youth facility at St Clement that potholes will not be filled. Because if that were the case, how many potholes could we fill if we didn't build a youth club in St Helier? So that argument is nullified. Secondly, I have to also suggest that the youth of St Helier are pretty well looked after compared to St Clement. They have parks aplenty, gyms on every street, cinemas, Springfield Stadium, Fort Regent, fast food outlets everywhere, snooker and pool facilities, and a bus centre that goes to all areas east and west. This is not about St Helier versus St Clement. This is about the needs of youth across the island. And now I'll go to my major speech because it says exactly where we stand. I'm not standing out of duty, but out of conscience to clarify a need in our parish for significant investment in our own youth club. We have no wish to delay or cancel a youth club in St Helier. Let me make that absolutely clear. We don't want to cancel the youth club in St Helier, since we can see that their need is greater than ours, and they currently have none. So part of a statesman's job is to actually look at your representatives of the parish, but also you have a greater role to look at the needs of the island. And you have to pair the two together. And it's difficult sometimes. Just lost my... So my only wish for them is that they get it delivered soon and don't have to wait as long as we have. So we got £3.5 million in a previous budget. It seems to me that sometimes these budget debates are a waste of time because we vote things and we don't get our money's worth. And that's pretty disastrous. We're wasting an awful lot of time today and in previous days. And it'll be a wonder to see whether these things actually come to fruition that we vote on. I say this because in office I've been privy to significant plans for FB Fields, now delayed or cancelled, and also a scheme for Larocchia School at an initial investment of £70 million. I saw those plans, I went to various meetings, and then that was watered down to 40 million, and now it looks as though we will just have an all-weather pitch. Nonetheless, we're grateful to that, Infrastructure Minister. 4 years ago, I was pleased to be told that there was £5 million for an imminent refurb or possible relocation of our youth club, possibly on the edge of FB Fields, and now nothing. So as a parish, with support from our deputies and procurers, we've made significant advances in mental health care with the provision of targeted mental health pathways supported by volunteer mental health practitioners. We've expanded our community services and payments for those in dire need, and we've recently opened a St Clement Community Hub at Le Morel, formerly Liscay. This is a mini version of the parish hall brought to the Le Morel and Le Marais area and has an incredible effect for the area and its community. We're currently working to find a suitable area for youngsters' playground, and Deputy Karen Wilson has created a new initiative entitled St Helier Community Development, which will see the joining up of all assets of the parish, be they people or buildings or land. These services cover most of our parishioners' needs, except our young people, our youth, the next generation. A youth club is a community within itself. It nurtures mutual understanding, respect, good manners, camaraderie, further education, well-being and fitness, and produces better outcomes for all. So we are a parish of 10,500 residents crammed into 4.5 square kilometres, with a great many disadvantaged through all age groups, and our young are a large proportion and cannot wait much longer. I therefore urge members to help us out here and join me in voting for the proposition. If not, can we have our £3.5 million, give it to the parish, and we'll do it ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Barbara Ward.
Thank you, sir. I'm struggling, likened to my fellow St Clement Deputy Alex Curtis. I too want to know where that money's gone. I wasn't aware that money had been allocated, and it is now not there. Where is it? There have been some very compelling arguments and debates this morning on both sides. And I feel that waiting for a further 4 years is really just too long. Why can't we be clever with our planning and start with St Helier, and when it's up and running, then we get the work done on improving our services for our youth in St Clement's. A stepped process. You may say, well, where are we going to get the money from? Well, I've been on this island 45 years, and every February and March we hear, oh, we've found some more money. You know, different departments have underspent. Why can't we use that money that is found, sir, or comes to light in February and March, that can be actually used to actually build our youth centre in St Clement's? Not immediately, because I think it would take on that we don't want to have no facilities either in St Clement's while we're waiting for St Helier to be done, but with very clever stepped planning process. When one is just about completion, we can then start and get moving on that St Clement's. So we are providing some facilities. But I think that that is some solution, is that monies can be used from the underspends of this year, so it won't be actually impacting on our budget per se. And that's what I want to say. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said, so I will limit myself to just a few comments. As has already been said, this island has committed itself to putting children first. It shouldn't be a competition between St Clement children or St Helier children or St Brelard children. I'm bemused. The spending was there, the money was there, the scheme was ready to go, there was a plan, there was a solution, and suddenly all that changed with the change of government. There has been no consultation, as I understand, from the parishioners of St Clement, and I agree with Deputy Wilson that this is not a fair distinction. It makes no economic sense to put sticking plasters on the existing crumbling infrastructure of Liscay Youth Club. In my comments around the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, I referred to this as a short-term budget, and I think this is an example. It's also an example of government not listening to parishioners. This shouldn't be a choice. Liscay should not be dropped. This is about both priorities. And I agree with Deputy Wilson when she says the Council of Ministers' position perpetuates the view that some communities are worth more than others. I think the decision should be reversed, and I would support this amendment. The money was there, the plan was in train, and I concur with Deputy Wilson that ministers should simply get on with it. But I think there's been insufficient consideration given to the impact of not doing so. This is another volte-face as a result of the new healthcare facilities. It also affects trust in government. In this case, broken promises might result in broken windows. This is the theory that visible signs of decline lead to a lack of interest and promote apathy and antisocial behaviour. Residents and visitors feel unsafe. Small issues, if left unaddressed, can escalate into larger problems. And changing priorities, sir, at this late stage may well have unintended consequences. As I said at the beginning, we are supposed to be putting children first. We're supposed to be supporting families to thrive. We're supposed to be encouraging people to remain in Jersey and bring up families. Deputy Ferry and Deputy Vibert tell us that the project is not ready to go. Well, it's more ready to go than the St Helier project, which strikes me as embryonic. No feasibility has been done. There doesn't appear to have been any costs provided, certainly not to the EHI panel. The SCAE project is different, I would argue. If the project had been progressed through 2024 using the £3.5 million at the same pace as it had in 2022 and 2023, we would have plans by now and probably planning permission. Deputy Jeune asked a good question. What is the consideration of the impact on St Helier? How will we know that this won't happen again in St Helier? It is a good question. What is the plan? What is the timescale for St Helier? It's certainly not going to be built in 2025 in the way that the SCAE would have been developed. And just in response to what Deputy Ward was saying, this amendment is about St Clement, not about what might or might not happen in St Helier. And I concur with Deputy Tadier, we shouldn't be waiting until 2028 to move this forward, and I'll be supporting the Deputy in her amendment.
Thank you. Next speaker is the Connétable St John.
Thank you, sir. So I recognise people's wishes to ensure that those in St Clement's get the very best facilities, especially in an area that's so well occupied, as the Constable told us. There's no disagreement that expanding and upgrading the facilities at the Liscay Youth Club is an important project, and that is why it is in our programme of work. As has and will be said on various occasions during this budget debate, though, we can't do everything at once. Our resources as an island and as a government don't allow for that. As ministers, we need to consider competing priorities, taking a broad view of what is needed across the island, and that is why we are unable to accept this amendment today. As Deputy Ferry mentioned, ahead of this debate, we went to visit the Skye Youth Centre and St Samaray Primary School last week. The fact is, there is a facility in place. It could be bigger and it could be upgraded. Indeed, it will be bigger and it will be upgraded. But there is a workable facility available. It is not a crumbling mess as described by Deputy Wilson. It could do with some TLC, but is not a crumbling mess. So I was far more concerned when I went next door to the school to see water leaking inside a school more than 12 months after Storm Kieran. That's what caused me real concern, and that's where my focus is on at the moment. Compare that to the north of St Helier, where we don't have a facility. Nothing. The youth in that part of the island also deserve a serviceable youth centre. If a finite amount of money is available to spend, it should be clear where the priority sits. So Deputy Wilson spoke about the work 42 years ago. Well, 42 years ago, as the Constable of St Peter said, there was plenty of activity in St Helier, Aquila, Seaton, Hermitage, to name a few. I'm sure there are many more than that. Its decision, the decision to focus on St Helier is backed by the youth service. So if members don't wish to believe the council ministers or trust our logic, then hopefully they can believe our youth workers on the ground, two of whom joined us on our site visit. During our visit to Samaray and Skye, we saw some options for quick wins to improve the existing provision. For example, we can make better use of the outdoor space and ensure it is available year round. And I'll be happy to take forward those possibilities with colleagues. There is a practical issue with this amendment as well, which I'll come back to shortly. Sir, we are asked if we're listening. We are listening. We need to make access to the FB playing fields, and I've asked officers repeatedly to do that, so I'm probably going to have to write to them to instruct them, because we've got a nice area where youngsters can utilise, and many do, but there's no need for them to walk around the road when they can just go through a gate, which unfortunately remains locked. We're looking at the sports provision at La Rocquiere, as the Constable said, but we have to be realistic. An £80 million plan, well, I think that was for Fantasy Island, sir. We're in Jersey. We need to be realistic, but we can do something. The Constable of St Clement was the only constable to identify a potential skate park in his parish, which I visited at the site with him. Sir, I'm working with the Education Minister to get more access to school estates out of hours. It's a shame Deputy Tadier is not here, because I could be an estate agent, so I'd describe the court as bijou in the youth centre. But next door, right next door, there's a much larger hall. Well, why aren't we using that for our young people in the evenings and on Saturdays and on Sundays? On the day we visited the school had actually been using the court in the youth centre because their hall was being used for something else. I pay tribute to the Constable and the deputies for the progress they're making. Anyone who looks at the St Clement's accounts, as I did last night, will see they support at least 6 youth organisations within their parish. One of those, the St Clement's Sports Club, whom I've met with to talk about their ambitions. And they help hundreds of youngsters each and every week. And I know that the Constable supports that initiative very well. Sir, we've heard that St Clement's is ready to go, yet when Deputy Wilson quoted from an email, she quoted, it was at a position to draw up the plans. Well, that doesn't sound to me as though that's ready to go. That sounds to me as though we're ready to draw up plans. Members could approve the money in this budget, but that wouldn't make the project deliverable. The funds would most of the funds would very likely remain unspent in 2025. Meanwhile, the amendment would prevent other projects which are deliverable from being taken forward. So my other interest in this amendment is that it seeks to take all the money from the budget for improving our public realm. That's a budget, sir, which we as ministers have already cut by some 50%. We've halved that budget, sir. Money for enhancing our public realm has been a target in amendments in this budget to the extent that if all the amendments lodged were adopted, we would be taking a figure in excess of 3.5 million from a £2.5 million budget. We could spend nothing on our public realm and invest the money elsewhere, but that isn't a decision without consequence. Many places, towns, cities, villages invest extensively in their public realm. In Jersey, we quite simply don't do enough. This is investment in Jersey, in our product, and improving what we can offer to islanders and visitors alike, both young and old. It makes areas of the island, especially in town, more modern, attractive and inclusive. It shows that we care about our public places, and that will encourage private enterprises to invest and show commitment to the island. And the Constable of St Helier gave a good example of the work we did together in Halkett Street. So after all, if we don't care, why should anyone else? If I thought that the public all thought St Helier was perfect and couldn't be improved by further investment, then I wouldn't be arguing for public realm investment. But that's far from the truth. Everyone I speak to wants to see St Helier improved, and that won't happen with a budget of zero. It is also a key objective of the CSP. I'd invite members to look at the comments paper, and in particular the images on page 3, 4 and 5 of that paper as to what we can achieve within St Helier. I'd like us to be able to spend many millions of pounds annually on our public realm, not only in St Helier but across the island. But sir, I have to be pragmatic, just as we're asking other members to be pragmatic. As part of balancing competing priorities, we have £2.5 million to invest in the public realm. I ask members not to take that figure to zero, leaving us with nothing to invest in improving our public places. Sir, for the reasons I've given, I ask that members support the creation of a new north of town facility as a priority, enhancing the SCAE from 2028 and continue investing in the public realm. And respectfully, sir, I ask members to reject the amendment. Thank you.
Going to St Mary.
So, thank you, sir. I begin by saying I have considerable sympathy with the proposer in bringing this proposition. The matter has been delayed despite various promises, and I fully appreciate why she needs to bring some certainty to the situation. Equally, I am concerned as to what might happen in the general scheme of things if the money mentioned is withdrawn from the public realm. In her earlier speech, the Deputy Adjourn, who has now left the chamber, I see, made reference to the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel's concern as to a number of matters and the lack of detail. She also made fleeting reference to Fort Regent, and as regards Fort Regent, the sorry, I see Deputy Adjourn is here, just moved a seat. She made reference to Fort Regent, and which prompted the panel to propose an amendment, the 19th amendment, which I assure you, sir, I'm not going to discuss in detail, but it's perhaps worth reading out the final paragraph. The full redevelopment project, beyond feasibility, will require a further sustainable funding model. This model will be developed by the Minister to the extent that the necessary funding will be included in the proposed budget 2026-2029 to be brought to the Assembly for approval. For my own part, I would take some comfort if some assurance was given on behalf of the Council of Ministers that they will indeed act as if that amendment, a similar amendment, be included here in respect of the SCAE project. That will bring some certainty to the situation. It would produce facts, figures, so that the situation could be monitored and would enable the full funding to be dealt with and identified at the time of the next budget. So with that, sir, I conclude my speech and hope that a member of the Council of Ministers might give their opinion on that, and I apologise for not getting my question in before the Constable St John spoke. Thanks, sir.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. I want to share my thoughts on the proposed changes to funding for the Lisquet and St. Helier Center. Both of these projects are incredibly important, and it's regrettably to hear that funding was there and now it's not for Lisquet. I fully understand the need to support and not delay neither of those projects. However, I cannot agree with the idea of prioritizing one project over the other, especially when it comes at the expense of St. Helier Youth Center, which in my opinion is urgently needed. I believe we shouldn't have to choose between the two or between neither of parishes, as exactly how Deputy Doublet said. Every child is equally important, no matter in what parish they live. However, if we are forced to choose due to funding, the reality is that the need for a youth center in St. Helier is far more urgent than renovating one that already exists. St. Helier is home to the largest youth population on the island. From the latest census data, 19% of the about 38,000 people registered in St. Helier are under 18, equaling about 7,200 youth in St. Helier. And keep this figure in mind, 7,200. Many of these young people come from migrant backgrounds or disadvantaged situations. They are already facing significant challenges in their daily lives, and they need support, guidance, and a safe place to gather. And contrary to what the Constable of St. Clement said, that there are plenty of activities for the young people to do in St. Helier, I disagree, as very few of the ones listed by the Constable would be accessible to minors, and almost everyone I spoke with, young or older, continues to say that there's almost nothing to do for our youth on this island. The St. Helier Youth Center could be a lifeline for these young people, offering them a space to build community, engage in the positive activities, and stay out of trouble. Delaying this project any further would only make these challenges worse. I fully support getting the Lisquet Center back on track. It's clear that this project is already far along in terms of planning and design. But if additional funds are needed to move this project forward, I believe we should find that money elsewhere. We should not take away funding from important infrastructure work and from an equally important youth facility, especially when the need in St. Helier is so pressing. While I represent St. Xavier, I'm ongoing in touch with families and communities in St. Helier, and I hear firsthand about the struggles they face. Our youth centers are a crucial support system, and we cannot afford to let one project delay another. As I've said many times before, including in my previous proposition to make the Jersey Youth Service a statutory provision, this youth service is critical to the future of our young people, and it must be supported in every parish it serves. I understand that difficult decisions have to be made, but I believe we should not sacrifice one vital youth facility to fund another. Instead, I urge the government to work with the Deputy and St. Clement's representatives to find alternative sources of funding for Lisquet within this term of office, so both projects can move forward as originally planned, and the youth in both areas to have the suitable facilities needed, and how I always say, where there's a will, there's a way. However, we simply cannot afford to delay the St. Helier Youth Center any longer either. For this reason, I cannot support this amendment in its current form. Thank you.
Deputy Meze?
Thank you, sir. I'm going to make it my personal mission with this speech to try to convince the Constable of St. Xavier, who said in his speech that he wasn't sure which way he was going to go ultimately in it. So my 10-year-old niece, who until very recently lived in my constituency, recently moved to St. Xavier. She told me she wanted to move somewhere with better political representation, obviously. And she's specifically in Gronvo, on the St. Xavier side of Gronvo. And she's gone from living somewhere where she was spending up to half an hour in the car every morning, creeping through traffic, being driven to school, to somewhere where her school is now literally on the other side of the road to her home. She's gone from somewhere where all of the children in the area she was living in were in different schools, to one where they're now in the same school, and she can go a few doors down, knock on a door and ask if a friend can come out and play. And she's now attending Gronvo Youth Centre, which I'm now hearing a lot about because of that. The Constable of St. Xavier said that children don't care what side of the border they're on. That's right, she's not asking anyone at a youth centre whether they're on the St. Helier half or the St. Xavier half of Gronvo. But this does lead to an important point, though, which is wherever the borders are, the proximity of the youth centre to where you are and where the children live and where they can safely get to does really matter. And in the centre of town, there is no dedicated youth centre for the children who live there. And the nearest ones are ones that I think you could reasonably say would not be appropriate for young children to be walking to get to, especially unaccompanied or even in groups of friends, because they are so far out there. And that's why I would urge him that it is, in my view, right that the urgency of the new youth centre in St Helier is addressed, because there are hundreds upon hundreds of new homes planned in that area, thousands of children who are not near in proximity to a youth centre that they can just pop along to with their parents feeling that the child is safe to make that journey and everything that goes with it. Whereas it is the case that though the youth centre at Liscay does need work being done to it, there is at least a facility that's operational there, that's serving young people there, serves as a hub for those children to be able to go to, interact with one another, and take up all the benefits that come with being able to go to a youth centre with dedicated youth workers to it as well. And that's why I'm pleased that it feels now like we're in a position where the development of a youth centre for those hundreds and hundreds of children in town is going to be delivered. I was alongside Deputy Rob Ward all along the way as he was campaigning for a youth centre in St Helier. That journey starting in 2018 in the CSP debate. So this has been going on for a long time with all sorts of different sites being looked at. Some progressing. I've saw wonderful designs for a whole host of different sets. And now we're at the point where, and I understand it was brought up in previous scrutiny hearing from the Minister for Children, that because of the change in plans for the old brewery site on Ann Street, we're in a position where that as a dedicated space, it could not be more perfect in terms of its location, in terms of its proximity to the new developments around, and that the use that had been designated for it previously has now been abandoned. That is on a site where work is being done on the housing around it, with Andium in partnership with Dandara, who I know are all absolutely keen to get on with it. And Andium themselves have expressed to me previously their frustration at having not been able to proceed with these things quick enough. So we're in a position now where we're going to make really good progress if we're allowed to do so. There's been talk of emotional blackmail. I think that's counted for both sides of this debate. In all honesty, I don't think it's fair to suggest one side's been guilty of it. Both certainly have been. And we're talking about our young people. Of course we're going to get passionate about it. And I, for one, don't blame a deputy of St Clement for wanting to bring an amendment that puts her constituents first. All of us ought to do the same thing from time to time. I don't blame her for that at all. But members have spoken about, I took some notes of some quotes here from some members, not wanting to pit one parish against another. Ridiculous to say one community deserves investment over another. Not sure why parishes are being pitted against one another. Don't buy this message that we can't do both. But so we have to look at the wording of the amendment before us to find the answers to those questions. And that is in the second part, subparagraph 2, where these words will be removed from the budget if this amendment is accepted. And those are the words saying that this has been reprofiled to allow a new youth facility in St Helier to be brought forward in the earlier years of the budget. So those words disappear from the budget if this amendment is accepted, and then that's the mandate to not do what this government had planned to do, which was to actually deliver on something that was being spoken of since way back in 2018 and deliver a fresh new facility for young people who otherwise have nothing in that area. So it is deeply frustrating, not even in relation to this debate, but in frequent debates where we talk about capital projects, where we make all sorts of lovely promises and then reality hits and things get reprofiled, they get reprioritised. And let's be clear that that's not always because of budgets. It's actually often to do with capacity. You know, the timing in which you deliver things. Do we have enough tradespeople? Do we have enough materials? Are we going to inadvertently spike costs because of putting too much demand in a short period of time? Are we going to sequence projects effectively? I mean, there's a potential sequencing in the scenario of this amendment being accepted, where a youth centre in Liscay could be closed for a period whilst work is being undertaken, and there's no youth service in St Helier at the same time. So there would be a period of time where lots more young people, if it's not sequenced properly, would have no provision at all. So it's not just about the funding, it's about all those other considerations, tradespeople, materials, and effective sequencing of projects to make sure things work in the meantime. So I would urge members to reject this amendment. I have no doubt whatsoever that the Minister for Children, his Assistant Minister, Education Minister and Infrastructure Minister are more than happy to engage with the representatives of St Clement to make sure that the needs of those young people around Liscay can be catered for as effectively as possible. And if tweaks to plans have to be made in order to do that, that's a conversation absolutely worthwhile happening. But I really urge members, please don't vote for an amendment that seeks to take out the words about the prioritisation of a new youth service centre in St Helier in an area where there is nothing currently. And I have to say, I find myself often feeling slightly embarrassed when I'm walking around in that area, because I represent that area and I live by Millennium Park as well, where I'm often stopped by constituents who talk to me, and occasionally some will point out their unease about the amounts of young people congregating in that area, particularly in the evenings when it's dark. And I sometimes have to bite my tongue because I want to say to them, well, what do you expect? What do you expect young people to do when there aren't alternatives? And with respect to the Constable of St Clement, he did refer to things to do in that area that are not appropriate for younger children to be doing, that they don't have the facilities in that area to be doing. You know, what do you expect when there's nothing for younger people to do? And the disquiet that can sometimes cause some people who feel uneasy about young people not in a more supervised environment when they're congregating. I don't have a huge amount of sympathy with that, but it's embarrassing to have to face that conversation with people, and how much better it would be for those young people, for everything that goes along with it, for them making friends, for the getting the support that the youth service so brilliantly provides, and all of that that's wrapped around in a dedicated facility in that area, in a place that more and more children are living because of decisions that this Assembly has made about homes being developed in those areas. Then let's get things the right way round, sir. Get that new youth facility built in St Helier for those children who lack it. And sir, let's get the youth centre at Liscay brought back to the standard that it ought to be and that the children in that area deserve for it to be. But let's sequence it in the most effective way we can, and that means rejecting this amendment.
Very much. Deputy Miller.
Thank you, sir. I didn't intend to say a great deal, and I'm now going to say even less, because Deputy Mezak has just discussed in more detail than I was going to, and very helpfully, the reprioritisation and profiling work that was done in the summer to try and work out when all these projects were going to happen. So I'm going to limit myself to simply saying there seem to have been some questions, I think, from Deputy Curtis, who's not here at the moment, about a missing £3.5 million. It hasn't gone missing. It remains in the Consolidated Fund. It has not been spent. And the same budget that was allocated for Liscay has simply been moved to 2028 and 2029, but we don't have the figures for we don't have a column for 2029. But the same budget's there, and the £3.5 million has not been taken or filched. It is there, and it will be made available for Liscay from over 28 and 29 to allow that project to complete in due course. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. And it's interesting because I don't want to be pitting one parish against another. I was interested to see this use of the word reprofiling, and I think one of the previous speakers talked about you can't reprofile children. So there's a famous line in Through the Looking Glass, the sequel to Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and it's a novel with which I'm sure the Assembly members are familiar. In it, the White Queen tells Alice that shortly before Her Majesty turns into a sheep, that the rule in this looking glass world is jam tomorrow and jam yesterday, but never jam today. In essence, it describes a situation where things are always promised but never materialise, a bit like the Liskeay Youth Centre project. As I researched my speech, I came across an answer to a written question tabled by Deputy Baudin of St Clement, dated the 15th of July 2013. I paraphrase, Jersey Property Holdings Maintenance has, in consultation with the Youth Service, held off undertaking work on the roof, which has deteriorated to the point of being porous and no longer fit for purpose, until funding could be secured. I understand funding was found because the alternative was to condemn the building and shut down the youth centre. Here we are, 11 years later, 11 years down the track, with history repeating itself, only things aren't quite yet as bad as last time. The facility is still usable, but now we discover it's deemed that the needs of the young people of St Helier are a priority over the youth of Liskeay. Who would ever trust a politician? I understand the argument. At least the young people of St Clement have something, whilst those of St Helier have nothing. The problem I have is that Liskeay was promised jam yesterday. But as with the line in the novel, that doesn't appear to extend to jam today. It's the same old bureaucratic and political double talk used to get out of broken promises. But of course we can have jam today, because the Gas Place site in the centre of St Helier has a ready-made solution that could be delivered in a year or so. It's called the Old Gas Company showrooms. Right now, they are being used for storing building supplies for the Northern Quarter development. We have a solution, even if you want to call it a meanwhile use. In plain sight. A solution that requires tens of thousands of pounds, not the millions a new long-term facility might provide, for which, incidentally, I don't believe we have the money. The term, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, comes to mind. When it comes to repurposing this site, we can have two wins, a win for St Helier and a win for St Clement. We simply need to use our imagination, cut our cloth to match the funding that is available now. Not tomorrow, not next year, but now, that jam today. I end with a prophetic quote from Through the Looking Glass. You can't change the past, but you might learn something from it. Members, please learn from the past. Don't pit the youth of one parish against another with promises of jam tomorrow. We have an opportunity to deliver for both today, and I urge members to support the amendment.
Very much. Conrad St Martin.
Thank you, sir. I've been trying desperately hard not to speak on this one. And I'd just like to say that with our backs to the wall, we can find a solution. We were promised sporting facilities in the east of the island at subsequent government plans because, as you'll notice, in the east of the island, in the west of the island, they're really well served. But the east of the island, people seem to think once you get through the tunnel, you know, there's nothing there. It's never materialised. We've been told again about the Rockier that there's no money for that. And then we had this play facilities, which are really short on the island. You know, we have play parks, which luckily some of them are being done up now. And play is so vitally important for children. And the Youth Parliament had said, you know, there was nothing for older children. There was play facilities which they liked, but there's nothing for older children. And people might say, and people often ask me, why do you like being a constable? One of the reasons I like being a constable is because it takes forever and sometimes never if you're in government. But if you're a constable, you can actually get things done if you want to. So on my village green, there was nothing for children. And I had an opportunity to get some logs there. So we have natural playscape. And I will say now that I'd passed it by the procurers. And they'd said, oh, no, I think that's going to be a bit dangerous. I don't think we should do that. So one afternoon when I knew that we were going to have it all, luckily, donors, we saw some logs. Emily Jennings, who's very good at play, she saw some logs. We had somebody with a tractor who said they could move them. So we moved them onto the village green at the end. And that was great because at the same time I was trying to raise funds to put the playground in. We now have a fantastic playground there, which used no public money, ratepayers' money, well, 2,500. And that is used actually every week by most of the classes from Montfort School, which shows that it is very interactive. And we have children there who suffer from autism, and we fenced it in because, you know, they're children who are bolters. We have that. But I still thought, well, we haven't got anything for the youth assembly. So we have this amazing Viking swing there. And I said, we didn't have the funds for that. And I knew I wasn't going to use ratepayers' money, but I went ahead, and I'm probably saying more than I should here. And I thought, build it and I will get it funded. So I built it, and we've had it funded, and we've had enough now that we can you know, pay for play inspectors. And people will say, oh, you're lucky. Actually, it's not luck. It's having the foresight and the pragmatism to get something done. So I do say that we do need a youth club in St Clement, and we have a fantastic constable in St Clement who does so much for his community. And we have a really good, you know, and the deputies are very good there. And it is a very built-up area. And we also do need the youth club in town. And we are not, we have constraints with the government, but we do have we do have reserves. And how much would it cost for us to build 2 youth centres? It's not building a new hospital, it's not building a new incinerator, it's building 2 youth centres. And I believe that if this government could find the money and build this, we will save money along the way, because youth centres absolutely enhance children's lives. We pay for a youth worker in Montfort. That's across the border in St Saviour. And we also, when I became constable, and I'm sorry, and I do sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, and I apologise for that, but I felt that we weren't doing enough for the children. We do an awful lot for the elderly in the parish, and we weren't doing very much for the children. So I invited the youth workers to a rates assembly, and they spoke. The children came in and spoke, and we do have a lot of people who attend our rates assemblies, and they can get quite heated. And from that, we got a chairman, and we got a treasurer, and our treasurer, who's amazing, and he's actually one of our procurers, and he's an accountant, and he set up a charitable trust for the. So we now have a charitable trust, which I'm now helping St Clement's to do. And because we had a fantastic youth service there, but they needed extra facilities, and we couldn't afford for the children to go on, away days and things like that. So we get corporate sponsors in, and we do that. And I just think that there should be money found in somewhere. There will be money. It's not. It's not running into tens of millions to do this. They're not huge projects, but I think what we'll save in the long run, with children's mental health and all the other facilities, if in Liskeay it'll be it'll be a hub for community. In St Tadier, it'll be a hub for the community, and I cannot express. How much that is worth. You cannot quantify it. So I would say to this government, please find some money, build these 2. You may even find that you can get some sponsorship as well. If you want some help on that, I will help you, because I've spent years trying to get sponsorship for all sorts of charities and things, and just build it. People will use them, and you will save so much money along the way. With having satisfied, youth and community. So please just do this.
Deputy Field.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to follow the previous speaker. I know that she's incredibly passionate about facilities for our young people and delivering for her constituency. But I do want to answer back the assumption that we may save money by proceeding at pace with 2 projects at the same time. As a former civil servant, I can say that one of the biggest time and money wasters within the civil service can be when politicians promise everything at the same time, overpromise and underdeliver. And what we've heard time and time again during this debate is about broken promises. I think the Constable of St Clement made the point that we vote for things time and time again that don't get delivered. So I was actually comforted and pleased when we had the discussion around the Council of Ministers table about how we would approach our capital programme and funding that capital programme. And I was even more pleased as a former project manager to see a Gantt chart attached to those discussions. Because what that did in a very practical way was looked at each project, where each project was, and where we were realistically going to be spending money on those projects. So where we reprofiled the money to where we would be realistically spending it, rather than doing what could be quite an easy thing to do, maybe more palatable now to people, saying that we'll put money here, there and everywhere, but then 2 years down the line finding that budgets hadn't been spent because actually the projects weren't at that point in time where they were shovel ready. What we have now, and I'm really pleased after, as Deputy Ward has reminded us, after a very long period of money being allocated for St Helier, but again, a project not being ready, so promising but not delivering, we now actually do have a project that's ready to go in St Helier. I am also concerned about the broader effect that this amendment may well have on both of those youth projects. I don't think anybody is denying that both projects are incredibly important. My understanding is that the Lesquay project is really just a sketch. There aren't plans. There's planning processes to happen. And even if money was budgeted for in this government plan, it's unrealistic to be thinking that it would be spent in this time period. If we were able to get the resources, get the planning permission, and find the suppliers, because that's another thing that we have to balance across our whole capital programme, is the availability of suppliers. If we were to do that and run both projects in tandem, my understanding is that the current plan would be to use the current Lesquay site. So what we may well end up with is no facilities in either parish for a period of time. Whereas actually what we have on the table now, we'll have a delivered facility in St Helier, and then when the Lesquay facility then starts, and the facility during that time may well have to close for a period of time, we will have a facility in St Helier available. We'll be shortening the time where we'll have no facilities available. So I do need to caution about unintended consequences of approving an amendment which on the face of it may sound nice, may sound like we would end up with a facility in Lesquay, but actually is quite impractical, could cost us more money because we'll set hairs running across the civil service, trying to do two projects at the same time. We'll be stretching our resources, and that will only lead to more expenditure and more money. So I would like to give members the comfort that actually, as a Council of Ministers, we took a very practical and pragmatic approach to how we delivered our capital budget for this time period. I also wanted to take the opportunity to answer back one of the claims made from the proposer around asbestos in the current Lesquay building. My understanding is that there has been an asbestos survey for the current building, and users can and should be assured that they can use that building safely, and I wouldn't want them thinking that they were unsafe using that building. So I would urge members to reject this amendment, but do that in full comfort that youth facilities across the island are indeed a priority and work is not stopping. We are just taking this in a very practical, considered and measured way, and we are not going to overpromise on what we can't deliver.
Thank you very much. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And ask members to stay with me because I find myself in very interesting position, good position, I think, because I was a St. Helier deputy at the previous term when we agreed at the States Assembly to build St. Helier Youth Centre in central St. Helier, and I did support Deputy Ward to build it on the Nelson Street, and I did support the St. Helier School, the Gas Place, and I was the Minister for Children and Education that put plans in place, and I'm back St. Helier deputy that actually agreed in this government plan more funds for St. Helier. I think it's really unfortunate that we are really going St. Helier via St. Clements, and this conversation started from the comments paper. This conversation started from actually responses to the scrutiny saying St. Helier first, St. Clement second. It hasn't started in this assembly. It has been made, I think, assumption by, cannot by, but that money disappeared, or by Deputy Ward, Rob Ward, the minister. The money didn't disappear. The money was there for St. Helier Youth Centre. The assumption was made that nobody worked on St. Helier Youth Centre for the last couple of years. I would like to reassure members that one of the first difficulties that we all have, it's actually Constable of St. Helier that didn't want to build at the Nelson Street. I understand why. And we've gone backwards and forwards trying to go through pre-planning advice that has been requested. And I gave pre-planning advice that it is possible. And it was a Deputy House that came with me together to see Paragon House that is for sale, and it's connected to the library place. And it's a really good location to the Millennium Park. And actually, Deputy Bini, just before, in the autumn, came with me and looked at this place and said, actually, it's a really, really good place for St. Helier Youth Centre. And we're going again to the pre-planning advice. So I think to claim that was nothing done for St. Helier developing youth centre in St. Helier, it's a claim that you need to know what happened during 2023 to progress with development. And actually the plans were drawn like sketches for Paragon House. So I would like to put it on the record because it's important that Assembly would be aware that nobody deserted St. Helier Youth Centre. Another claim that was in the Assembly that St. Helier has only one youth centre by the Minister. Actually, St. Helier has 3, and I believe it's not enough. We definitely need, I'm not arguing, but we do have St. James, and we do have Move On Cafe, and we're missing at Lapukale. I'm fighting for Lapukale. We have children at Lapukale that needs to be driven to for the first tower, and it's really highly residential area, but I understand that St. Helier Central is extremely important and needs to be delivered. Deputy Mazik spoke about sequency, and I agree. It needs to be sequency, and it is a trajectory. And as Deputy Miller, the Treasury Minister, confirmed, it was allocations of 3.5 million that were not used. I would like to ask, and I have a confirmation from the officer from the 10th of January 2024. We are talking about just before the vote of no confidence. And the confirmation saying the feasibility confirmed, and we progress to the planning stage. There is a risk that we will not get planning permission by the end of 2024. A construction can start in 2025, delivered by 2026. If somebody in this assembly thinking, is it possible to work on several projects at the same time? And I understand the capacity, and I completely agree with the infrastructure minister to talk about capacity, but there are different stages. There is a feasibility stage, there is design stage, planning application stage, bylaw stage, tender stage. All these stages don't require millions. We all know that the planning is not going as we plan, some projects can be delayed and some projects can be progressed quicker. And this is why we did have an agreement within the Treasury, and actually it was confirmed at the Scrutiny Liaison Committee hearing, that if one of the projects received planning quicker, as the skate park, the money can be found because it is about the delivery for the young people. And yes, maybe JPH has, and I'm sure that JPH has limited capacity, but during my time to deliver projects like Montalabe extension, like canteen at the Hot Valley schools, or other capital project that was delivered in 2023, sometimes we did use local companies, architects, because they can support us and they can have some speciality. Maybe it's not the most economic, but we do need to progress. And if we would like to revive the economy, infrastructure projects is one of the projects that actually bring the economy up. I think if the plan in 2024 would progress and we would use the 3.5 million that were allocated, actually we wouldn't need to use all of them, and we would have planning application by now, we wouldn't have this debate and we wouldn't be reprofiling, because I would like to ask what was delivered in 2024. Do we have anything in the planning stage? I would suggest if we would have 3 projects in the planning stage and 2 of them agreed at the same time, maybe in 2026 we decide which project we would reprioritize. But to say we'll continue this in 2028, oh, brilliant. So we will not have anything done till 2028, when it was very, very helpful community project, family support for Summer School and the area it calls Lescae. We are talking about one of the schools that they have highest Jersey premium, that lives in the flats. I'm not saying which one is more important. The only thing that I'm saying that government, if they would engage with Deputy Wilson, as they're promising now to engage, they would find a solution to progress several projects to the planning stage, not to the building. When the planning will be granted, you can decide and we can discuss next budget. But now we're basically saying one project is progressing, another forgotten until 2028. Another thing that I picked up, which budget it's coming. I think that the capital project is allocated for the youth center. Well, I know that Deputy Wilson proposed a public realm, but it's 2 different budgets actually. And again, it can be engaged. And I know that I spoke a bit longer, I'll try to close. I've been told several times that maybe I was too ambitious, and I'll take it. I'm proud to be too ambitious, because if I'm ambitious, I might deliver 3/4, but if I'm completely unambitious, and anyway, every time it's not possible to deliver 100%. To be unambitious and not deliver, it's even worse. So I will stick with what I think. And if we would like to make sure that our young people will have aspiration and they will believe in us, I think this government needs to have an aspiration. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment?
Thank you, sir. I'll emphasise the points made earlier, but I won't spend any time on them, about the deserts in the east of the island for public access, play and sporting facilities, some of which are provided by private individuals and organisations, which is quite absurd. But I would speak about something that hasn't been mentioned, and that is the Youth Justice Strategy, which my colleague behind me has intimated to us as a scrutiny panel. That strategy says quite clearly that early intervention is vital. And early intervention, sir, can be done in many ways. But one of the ways that was listed, and I think I support entirely, is that of the youth service, sir, that can identify individuals that are at risk, individuals that could become a trouble or a problem in future years. And I'm very fortunate, I have a youth club in Gorey Village, sir, which is very active. Hundreds of young people go to it every week. And we have a new youth worker who's extremely active. I switched on some Christmas lights last night. The tree was decorated from decorations made by the children at the Gorey Youth Centre, and they were fantastic. That's the sort of work that can be achieved. And in this case, I would not normally argue against facilities in the east of the island, but St Clement's has a facility and has youth workers, and thanks to the work of my colleague on my left, has many people active in that area. Grouville has youth workers and outreach workers, which we're very proud of the work that they do, and they do keep us in touch with any issues arising. However, I would say that that's not just people. It's a place, it's a hub, it's a place where children can gather and meet, where those individuals can then assess their issues and their problems. And that is where we need to concentrate our minds in this case, because I believe St Helier needs, with a third of the island's children, St Helier needs that facility in a greater emphasis from this government, and I will not be supporting this. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Coles.
Thank you, sir. And I rise now because I've seen that Deputy War has returned to the room, and I would like to carry on his jam analogy. Because unfortunately, jam spread too thin leaves no taste. And unfortunately, if you can have all the jam in the world but not enough knives to spread it on your toast, again, you have jam that is sat there and not able to be eaten. I'm just noticing a common theme within what a lot of people are saying about the different types of youth facilities. And again, as Deputy War mentioned about the site at Gas Place, the site at Liscay, and also the site on the Ann Street Brewery site. These all require planning permission to actually be able to be used as a youth facility still. Nothing other than the facility at Liscay, which is currently able to be used as a youth facility. It is safe and it is able to be used. The site that Deputy War references on Gas Place would need to go through planning permission to be able to be used as a youth centre. Then all the equipment and materials inside would have to be moved out, so that would cause delay and time. It's not just as quick, snappy of fingers, and these things can be good and ready to go. The Liscay facility does require planning permission. It needs architect's drawings, it needs the pre-app advice, also needs building control. This does all take time. But again, it has a facility which is still able to be used. And this is my point. This is not about pitching St Helier against St Clement's. This is, as other members have said, it's about providing something as soon as possible for the youth to use. St Clement's has a facility. It might not be ideal, it might not be perfect. And I agree, it does need to be modernised, it needs to be brought through. So I would urge the infrastructure minister at some point when his budget allows, or if he has a gap in resources, that he has something that he can use, that he would expedite the facility at Liscay to move up his priority lists. But we're also got to remember this is the rolling budget, and I think the Constable of St Helier was actually very fair in his assessment that this public realm doesn't just influence St Helier, it influences every parish. Every road is part of the public realm. All these projects come out of this public realm budget. And I'd also mention that to Deputy War, that this also impacts Half-Day Park, an area that we had an amendment brought in one of my first budgets within this Assembly to increase funding to there, which was actually rejected by this Assembly. And so there we are, budgets lacking to improve the areas of Half-Day Park. So, sir, it is a shame that, like you said, the second part of the Deputy's amendment was to remove the reprofiling for this youth centre in St Helier, and there wasn't a way to amend it so she could have pushed for the support of Liscay to happen sooner or when budgets allowed. But unfortunately, sir, I believe where you have a centre that is ready, it is actually available for young people to use, we need to get a youth centre where there isn't one, where there are a lot of young people. As the Constable of Grouville just alluded, early intervention happens at these youth centres. The youth service need a facility in which to carry out their service. And that just doesn't exist in St Helier, sir, and we need to push for that. So, sir, I will be, unfortunately, voting against this amendment. But unfortunately, we do need a facility where there isn't one.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to speak briefly about economics. Firstly, I believe personally that early intervention makes good economics. Not only does it improve lives and it improves futures, it also reduces costs. And not only economic costs in terms of delivery of public services to pick up the pieces when lives go wrong, but it also improves the cost to life by improving lives and avoiding people reaching crisis points in their lives. So investing in our youth is a good investment in our society, and it's also a good investment for our public service of the future. But also, sir, we have to take into account the current economic context within which we are debating this government plan. And sir, if I recall correctly, we can look back at government plans of the past and consider how former governments have dealt with difficult economic circumstances by introducing fiscal stimulus projects. Fiscal stimulus projects are often used when there's a construction industry calling out for work, expressing concern about their future. And of course, I've heard Assembly members speak very regularly over this past year about their concerns as we have seen companies go under because of difficult circumstances. So when there's difficult circumstances in the private sector, then that, in my view, sir, is time for the public sector to step up, to increase its infrastructure projects, to increase its delivery, to take up that slack in the system. Some members, unfortunately, have pointed out that this project would need to go through the planning application process. And I think Deputy Gardner pointed out that the position that this project was in January, sir, and it is worth re-emphasising that because it has been a choice of this government to not progress this project to a point where it would be ready to be delivered and constructed in 2025. That was an opportunity, that is an opportunity lost, and I hope that the government will be able to explain to members of the construction industry why they are not producing shovel-ready projects for them to deliver.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, Deputy Ozey.
I'm just going to speak very briefly, sir. I find myself in a really difficult position, having done the job. I don't want to sound as though I know it all, because I don't. I made mistakes, lots of them. But what I do know is that I was part of governments that were finding solutions, not pitting one against the other. The Constable of St Helier knows. As a former deputy of St Helier, I put St Helier in the government plan for the first time. We're seeing that, and now I've got the unseemly situation where I'm seeing that the urban parishes of St Clement and St Helier are being put against the other. The government is causing, if I may respectfully say, their own problems by not finding solutions. You find solutions, you rise to the challenge, and you don't pit one against the other. And I regret that we are in this position. It shouldn't be like this. This is not what I'm used to, and I don't like it. And I will be supporting my fellow deputy of St Clement because I think the government needs to find a solution and not just a problem. And we know the construction industry, the last speaker, for no loyalty reasons at all, I didn't know the minute Deputy Moore was going to speak. She's absolutely right. The construction industry is on its knees and it needs shovel-ready projects. Planning is not working. It's not fast enough. We all know that. What's being done? I haven't heard much. I will be supporting Deputy Wilson and my colleagues in St Clement because, of course, St Clement's is our neighbour of only a strip of St Saviour in between St Helier and St Clement's, and we need to support them.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Wilson to respond.
Sir, I'd first like to give my heartfelt thanks to members for the consideration they have of this amendment. I think what we have had today, quite unexpectedly, in my view, is a debate which has opened up a whole stream of issues about how we make choices and how we approach the needs and the priorities of our community and our island. The words through the debate that came to me really were about struggle. And what I wanted through this amendment to do was to give some hope to people, not to continue the struggle, but to actually give them a belief that actually, as an assembly, we could move mountains, we could actually create a different world where people of a certain age, young people, were actually, their voices were valued and they'd been heard. So I struggled, I must admit, when I heard some of the language that we have used in this debate. And the first point I want to make is that this is not about pitching one parish against another. I have repeatedly said my concern is to make sure that we can fulfil the needs of both communities in this regard. And to consider comparing the needs of a community with how a road looks, I find really concerning, because for me that challenges the issue of where the focus is. I want to come on to the point around deprioritisation, reprofiling. You know, what kind of a message does that send out for people? And I urge the government to consider what that has meant in this debate to the young people who are hearing this debate. It's really important for me that some of those comments and those languages can be explained to them. Deputy Jeune talked about abortive and sunk costs. I know that the infrastructure minister and I have probably sparred a little bit about the indefensible use of public money. I stand by my word on this. There have been so many costs lost as a result of things that have been considered, planned and developed in terms of proposals. Please, can we stop this? Can we just commit to doing something that we're going to say, that we're going to do? And that just as much applies to stuff that has been planned for St Helier as it does to St Clement. We do need to know where the money has gone. I accept Deputy Miller has got a schedule for 2028, but the thing is, I want to go on a world holiday in 2028, but I don't know whether I'm going to have the money to afford it. So to make a promise that the money is going to be there in 2028, I think actually is a problem. And I think that's where we're at. We've had that said to us so many times: the money's coming, the money's coming, the money's coming. And when we get there, we find that we've not saved up enough, or we've not committed to open the savings account. So if we've got the money today, and we do have the money today, I don't accept that we haven't, we do have it. Let's just get on with this now. Deputy Tadier talked about investing in future economy and investing in early education and infrastructure. And this issue about how we're talking about the notion of reserves and then still pleading poverty. We're sending out so many conflicting messages to people. We do need to be really clear about our intentions. And I'm asking the government to tell young people of this island, what is your intention for youth services? Please do not debase it to a discussion on where a capital project is going to be developed. Let's talk about what the agenda is, what the infrastructure requirements are, what the investment is, and let's have a proper plan. I welcome engaging with the ministers and the assistant ministers on the discussion, but I urge them to come up with something different. They could have actually put another amendment into this. We could have actually seen something that I would have been happy to accept, but unfortunately, I think, as somebody said yesterday, you know, the computer says no. So we've spent a long time today, and I do feel it has been a really, really important time, because we don't really get to talk about the important issues that affect our social conscience, that underpin the values, you know, that we carry. And this, for me, has been one of those today. Deputy Kirsten has talked about optimism and community trust eroding. Please, in your considerations, can I ask people, sir, to make sure that they do not lose the trust of young people. They do not lose the trust of communities who have invested so much time and effort in trying to actually get their proposition through the door. I wanted to refer to Deputy Ward, sir, Deputy Robert Ward, about his frustration. I mean, I feel that. I absolutely feel that. I share that with him. But his job is to champion his frustrations in ways that actually deliver for young people. And I want him to be able to work with us to see how we can actually alleviate some of those frustrations and come up with, as Deputy Osif has just said, some solutions. I work with an amazing constable. He has put so much effort into advocating, he's got me all emotional now, for the young people in our community. He started the idea that there is an ambition that we need to realise for young people. He started the work on that. I'm literally, you know, jumping on the back of his coattails to try and see if we can actually mobilise the thoughts and the values that people have, that he has, that he shares, that he's gathered from the community to make something happen. Deputy Miles talked about putting children first. I couldn't agree with her analysis of her speech more. She talked about if we do not address the issues around building infrastructure, building capability within our communities, the consequence is that it will and does ignite antisocial behaviour. And we have got problems in St Clement because we cannot provide sufficient facilities for people to engage in meaningful activity. That is a real social concern. That is a real social issue that we cannot ignore. I welcome the fact that Constable Jayan and ministers attended Liscay, but you know, speaking to two youth workers isn't what drives this amendment. It's the words, it's the concerns, it's the needs of the community that we've spoken to, many people we've spoken to, that we're reflecting here today. Deputy Kovac talked about finding money from elsewhere, as did Constable Martin. So I think that's the challenge. That's what I'm asking people to do. Please look and find and get some money to put into this scheme and get it off the ground. And Deputy Mezek talked about proximity. He talked about, you know, it's really important that you have to get to somewhere that you can get to so that you can use it. Well, the thing is, if we don't actually invest in the community facilities at Liscay, people are going to have to travel, you know, and I think that's a bit of a double standard. We've talked about sequencing and we've talked about promising, you know, jump today and jump tomorrow. And I couldn't agree more with Deputy War in terms of the things that he said. Actually trying to find and address solutions has been problematic. So can we find a different way to address the way in which we address a problem, we find a problem, and how we look for solutions around that? I was interested to hear Deputy Feltham's comments on how, if we support this amendment, it might actually send hers running in the civil service. I want it to. Yeah, I want them to be able to understand the responsibilities they also have to listen to the voice of the people, the civil service listening to the voice of the people and actually delivering for them. Deputy Gardner talked about the Jersey premium being at the highest level in Liskeay. This is true. And what I want to say on that is that when you're thinking about this amendment, think about need, not just in terms of it being defined by numbers or where to put something, but think about the need. People who live in a flat on the 11th floor with 3 children, who cannot travel into town, cannot access the facilities, rely on the local community infrastructure for their support. So, Sarah, I want to conclude by just calling out and making reference to the issue about the connection with our economy. I talked in my earlier speech about how this amendment was really designed to talk about other issues that are connected to the way in which community works, how it connects to our economy, how we actually build a future for people, and what kind of infrastructure we're putting in around our local communities. So there are choices that can be made that can address and balance all of those in one go. And what I'm asking for is to consider the value and the opportunities that by investing in Liskeay and the development of this youth and community facility, the impact it will have on other aspects of the public service that will result in less demand for healthcare, less demand for social support, greater levels of employment, and helping to generate a community that is actually vibrant, economically active, and is able to make a contribution to the wider island. So this amendment is about examining your social conscience and digging deep to actually get with the kids and deliver on this project. Thank you very much, sir. I move for the amendment.
Can you ask the appel? Yes. The appel is asked for. I ask members to return to their seats. The vote is on Amendment 17. And I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been defeated. 15 votes pour, 31 votes contre, no abstentions. Indeed.
Those members voting for the Connotab of St Lawrence and St Clement, and Deputies Gardner, Moore, Joseph, Balash, War, Miles, Renouf, Jearn, Alex Curtis, Barbara Ward, Wilson, Andrews and Doublé, and those members voting contre the Connotab of St Helier, St Brillard, Trinity, St Peter, St John, Grouville and St Mary and St Saviour, and Deputies Southern, Labby, Tadier, Luce, Morel, Lahegara, Ayer, Rob Ward, Alves, Gorst, Farnham, Mesick, Coles, Porray, Feltham, Miller, Howell, Tom Binet, Ferry, Kovac, Rose Binet and Catherine Curtis, and the Connotab of St Juan.
Very well. We now come to Amendment 19. And yes, Minister.
So I think Amendment 19 has now been accepted. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't read as accepted at the beginning, so has it now been accepted?
It has been subsequently accepted, sir, after the original reading. I thought the...
Well, I'm afraid it still needs to be read and debated, but it may be the debate will be extremely short if the government is accepting it. Very well. I ask the greffier, it's the 19th Amendment, brought by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 2, paragraph G. After the words summary tables 5, 1 and 2 of the report, insert the words, except that in summary table 5.2, after the head of expenditure for major refurbishment and upgrades, there should be inserted heads of expenditure entitled Fort Regent Development, with an allocation of £0 to be shown against the new head of expenditure. Page 4, paragraph O. After the words, as set out in the appendix to the report, insert the words, except that on page 57, after table 25, major refurbishments and upgrades, breakdown of grouped head of expenditure, there should be inserted the following words. Fort Regent Redevelopment. Fort Regent Redevelopment is established as a head of expenditure to transparently identify funding provided by government in support of a programme of works in conjunction with the government's chosen development partner on this major publicly owned asset. Establishing the redevelopment project as head of expenditure ensures that all work carried out and money spent on the site are subject to the proper level of ministerial and States Assembly oversight. The Minister for Infrastructure and Council of Ministers will work with the States of Jersey Development Company to identify the appropriate funding and source for funding of feasibility work by no later than the 31st of March 2025. It is recognised that the project will be iterative and involve extensive public engagement at all stages, and that this and the necessary design and works will require significant funding. The full redevelopment project beyond feasibility will require a further sustainable funding model. This model will be developed by the Minister to the extent that the necessary funding will be included in the proposed budget 2026 to 2029 to be brought to the Assembly for approval.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And the panel has asked Deputy Curtis to be the main rapporteur for this amendment. And you'll be glad to know that we've just discussed that it will be a very, very short speech, but of course he has prepared to be the main rapporteur, so it would be likely to hear a short version for you all.
Well, I'm...
If that's possible, sir,
yes,
to be the main.
it's certainly possible to have a short version. I can understand how over the course of the last half day that may have seemed that it wasn't possible, but
We're very happy
it certainly
for it,
is
sir.
possible. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I will start how I originally wrote this and sum up quite quickly. A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. So that is, of course, Gandalf the Grey in Lord of the Rings. Well, sir, a government is not a wizard and does not always get to act precisely when it means to. So when on asking the Infrastructure Minister on the merits of this amendment, his main comment was it was 12 months too early, the panel thought it was a prudent and harmless thing to do. We are glad the Council of Ministers agree with this position and have chosen to accept this amendment, and hope all members agree with this shared position.
Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment?
So clearly, I'm not a wizard, and I got my timing wrong, sir, so we're more than happy to accept. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Coles.
A short point of clarification, really, sir. The quote is from the Fellowship of the Rings, and the saga was the Lord of the Rings.
But it was correctly attributed to Gandalf the Grey. Deputy Rev.
So yes, very, very quickly. I'm feeling slightly envious, I must admit, and slightly left out. The amendment refers to separate heads of expenditure. The next amendment we will be discussing also refers to separate heads of expenditure. The government hasn't chosen to accept mine, and I just wonder whether the Minister could explain, in her summing up, why the two cases are so different.
Well, the Minister won't necessarily be speaking at all to this amendment because it's the rapporteur. And does any other member wish to speak? No other member wish to speak, then I call upon Deputy Alex Curtis to respond.
I thank the Minister for Infrastructure for his comments, and I'll call for the appel.
The appel is called for. Members appear to already be in their seats, so I will ask the referee to open the voting. The vote is on the 19th Amendment. And if members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, ask the Secretary to close the voting. Yes, the amendment has been adopted. 44 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions.
So could I ask that Deputy Alex Curtis moves all of the amendments from now on?
I'm prepared to take a ruling from the Chair, provided he includes a quotation from the Lord of the Rings trilogy on every occasion. Very well. Yes, well, we have 10 minutes, and the next amendment is the 22nd amendment brought by Deputy Curtis of St Clement. So this may be a quick one as well. And I ask the greffier to read. Sorry. That's him to say. Oh, yes. I understand you're only moving the last paragraph, Deputy.
That is correct, sir.
Right, in which case I ask the greffier only to read the last part of the proposition.
Page 4, paragraph O, after the words to the report, insert the words except that. On page 61, after the words support other systems, there should be inserted the words from 2025 and beyond, the delivery of the digital services platform shall be built and designed following open design principles.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And to Deputy Tadier and the Assembly's delight, I hope this will be brief as well. Firstly, members will note that I've had this amendment read without any financial implications. Originally, this amendment aimed to achieve two things: greater funding for the digital services platform at the expense of a reduction in funding to the digital care strategy, and secondly, a commitment from government on some principles of delivery. I have withdrawn the funding reallocation proposed from the digital care strategy budget, but I have kept in the narrative, which the government agree with. Firstly, to address the funding, originally I had looked at the options of funding, and in the spirits of governance and accountability, which I will touch on in Amendment 21, I looked to the digital care strategy, which proposed a £2.12 million increase in funding with a single line of justification in the government plan. A justification nonetheless. So I am now content to leave these budgets alone. The Health Minister has outlined via written questions his plans for the budget, a breakdown of projects, and the Chief Information Officer has said he is content with the split of budget between these two. It also gives the Health Minister no get-out card for 2025 on the delivery of digital care. He is getting what he asked for and therefore cannot justify any misdelivery against a budget reduction. And I look forward to the Assembly holding him to account. I do, however, want to talk very briefly about how we deliver IT and digital, but I will not do so to any length. Sir, what is remaining of this proposition is something uncontentious. In fact, it is acceptable by the government because they believe they are already doing it. And that is to include the words open design principles. The government plan, this budget debate, is easily getting messy and confused. And so I will leave a longer debate on IT methodology and strategy to another debate. But I've included these words because I am concerned with how we deliver IT. I was concerned when I had a role in shaping it. I have a concern now I have less of a role. And that is about how we deliver value for money and we adapt with the times. The government has long published guidance on its website, still pages referring to the State of Jersey, a set of digital design principles. And whilst I won't read them all out, one of them says, use open standards. Now, much as in construction or in education, repeatability, commonality, and openness are important for good value delivery. And I have a concern that we won't be following these guidance. I'm reassured that the leadership in what was modernisation and digital assures us we are, but these words provide us just a little bit of reassurance that we as an Assembly can hold the government and the delivery of digital projects, well in particular just the government digital services platform, to the standards they are already subscribed to. Why is it important? As I say, open standards help with cost. partly because anybody can know how to implement on top of them. And of all the projects, the one that has received a 71% reduction in budget, the digital services platform is there to deliver a new front end to government, a new way for citizens to access our services. And some of the greatest loss of trust I feel citizens have in how we interact with government and how they can trust that the services and processes work for them or work against them. Delivering more services, whether it be Treasury or for social, for health or for infrastructure and DVS, is important. And so I trust the government will search hard for money to fund these, perhaps with cross-charging for this platform. But in the meantime, I would like to think that an eye to the future and how we deliver that, and a clear mandate to deliver in the open, within the flexibility this affords the department, will be adopted. And lastly, on the topic of not going too long, I decided to include this in the government plan originally, or the budget, from the repeated messages of the Treasury Minister that many debates about anything financial or of substance have a life in the budget. And I hope in 2025 the Treasury Minister will support debates outside the budget where they are on substantive topics. So I look to return to this Assembly with more in the new year. With that, sir, I make the proposition.
Is the amendment seconded? Yes. Does any member speak on the amendment? Yes, sir. Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to follow Deputy Curtis, and I'm pleased he hasn't made a hobbit of quoting Tolkien. I think we all share the same ambitions with the direction of travel with modernisation and digital. I recognise the work the Deputy has done in the previous governments and under the new wording relating to our commitment to continuing to follow open principles. We're happy to accept that. Thank you, sir.
Are you proposing the adjournment, or do you wish to speak?
I just wanted to offer a brief word of thanks for the Deputy for for agreeing not to take any money from the digital health funding, because I think it would have been catastrophic, sir. So I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Could I just ask if anyone else wishes to speak in this debate? Because otherwise, if not, we can finish it before the adjournment. But if anyone does wish to speak, then obviously it's time to adjourn. So could people just put their lights on if they're intending to speak? Very well. Then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Alex Curtis to respond.
With an eye to the time and an eye to next year, I shall leave it there, sir. Call for the appel.
Sorry?
Call for the appel.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the 22nd amendment, and ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. That amendment 2 has been adopted. 44 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstention.
Propose the adjournment, sir.
The adjournment is proposed. The Assembly will stand adjourned until 2:15.